Well, good morning and welcome to the John Fredericks Show. I am Scott Rigell. I have the privilege of serving Virginia's 2nd Congressional District in Congress, and I am delighted to be with you, and I appreciate you being up this morning and tuning in. I've got a few folks to thank. John Fredericks. Listen, John, if you're up and listening, thank you so much for the privilege, really the privilege to host the show this morning. It's a real treat for me. Ken, thank you for getting up, sir. Appreciate that.
My pleasure. Good to see you.
Yes, sir. And it's good to be in studio. I enjoy calling in, but it's always better to be in studio. And I want to thank a young man, Esmel Meeks. He got up early this morning, picked me up, and he's with me about 16 hours a day. We're actually going to hear from Esmel a bit later because I think he can offer some interesting perspective on where the Republican Party is falling short and where we need to go, particularly with reaching young people in an increasingly diverse electorate. You know, it's not often that I get up at 4 o'clock and am happy to do so. Normally, it's if I have the opportunity to go duck hunting, that's where you almost don't even need to set an alarm clock. But I was happy to get up this morning to be with you this morning. And we've got a terrific lineup of guests. Jason Miyares, he is a good friend and a trusted confidant. He is a former prosecutor with the Commonwealth of Virginia and now is a top Tier 1 political analyst. And he had actually a lot to do with me seeking this office. And he's going to give us a perspective of GOP Virginia politics. We've got Representative Steve Scalise, a good friend from Louisiana, talking about offshore energy, Iran, healthcare, and the Republican Study Committee platform. My good friend, Senator Jeff McWaters, a fine businessman and leader in the Commonwealth. We're going to hear from him. State Senate candidate Wayne Coleman will join us and talk about his race. Representative Frank Wolf from Northern Virginia, he is leading the effort to hold the administration accountable for their actions with respect to Benghazi. And I'm looking forward to having Frank on. And then Congressman Jeff Miller from Florida, he is the chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee, and he can really provide us some insight as to the challenges that are being faced at the VA and where we need to go from there. And then wrapping up will be my friend Vivian Page. She's a CPA, but she's coming on the show today just to provide her perspective and analysis. She is a regular contributor to the Virginian Pilot on the editorial page, and we agree on a lot of things, Vivian and I do, and there's some things we disagree on, so that'll be an interesting segment. You know, this is a really challenging time in our country as I go across Virginia's 2nd Congressional District and the entire region and really through the Commonwealth. There just seems to be what I call a toxic mix and a troubling mix of anxiety, of fear, of resentment, even anger about where we're headed as a country. And it really is an all-hands-on-deck moment. So I look forward to working through so many of these issues. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about solutions, and that's so important. Anyone who is serving in a leadership position, it's more than the obligation to simply point out a problem. It's important that we elevate wise solutions, and we're going to talk about that. And when I get in a situation like we're facing in our country, where we have much anxiety and much uncertainty, I pause and I think, all right, what do I know with certainty? What truths and founding principles can I rely upon to make sure that we make good decisions? And much of that, for me, is found in our founding documents and from our founding fathers. And this morning, in this opening segment, I'm going to draw from a very deep well, and that is the farewell address that was given and shared by our first president, George Washington. I reread that document recently, and I just found myself highlighting and circling these things because these, though they were written so long ago, these are powerful, powerful truths about, there were some warnings that the president gave us, and he warned us about debt. He warned us about partisanship. And I think all of this is completely relevant to where we are in our country right now. You know, I'm a businessman, and as a businessman, I deal with reality, both financial reality and political reality, and just confront both head on. And here's our reality with respect to our finances. You know, we're over $17 trillion in debt, and so our financial condition is not good, and it's an unacceptable condition. And then you look at where we're headed. What course are we set on? Well, our deficits are right now over $650 billion. That's well over 3% of our economy, which is approximately $15 trillion. And our president is failing to provide any context whatsoever to his comments that the deficits are half of where they were. Now, while there's some truth in the statement that they're less than they were, he's implying, by the way he phrases it, that everything's okay. Look, everything is not okay. Deficits exceeding 3% of our economy, any respected economist will tell you that these are non-sustainable. I'm a balanced budget guy, meaning that revenues and expenditures would be equal. But even if we can't get to that point, at least in the near term, we can't stay on this path where deficits exceed 3% of our economy. And so here we are, we're in an unacceptable condition, and we're headed in an unacceptable direction. So one thing I know for sure is this: we cannot stay on this path. Gridlock is not acceptable. And here's what our very first president said about debt in his farewell remarks. He said, "As a very important source of strength and security, cherish public credit. One method of preserving it is to use it as sparingly as possible, not ungenerously throwing upon posterity the burden," listen carefully here, "the burden which we ourselves ought to bear." You know, I really believe it's immoral for one generation to pass on to the next generation the kind of debt that's this presently being passed on to our children and grandchildren. Not long ago, I had the opportunity to be on the C-SPAN show at the 1 in the morning, where it's really nice. You can talk about 45 minutes uninterrupted there and answer the questions with plenty of time. And I didn't know this at the time, but my daughter Mallory, she and her husband have given us 2 wonderful grandchildren, Parks and Reese. She took a picture of Parks looking up at the television while I was speaking on this C-SPAN program. So all you see is the back of Parks's head, and you see me up on the screen, and he's looking up at me. And when she showed me this picture, I was really moved by it, and got actually a little choked up, because as I saw that picture, what I saw in my grandson was this: Granddaddy, what kind of America am I going to inherit? What's it going to look like when I'm 30 and 40 and, God willing, 50 and 60? And right now I'm very troubled by that. And it's bigger than a Republican or Democratic or independent issue. It's a moral imperative that we do a better job as the American people, and certainly in Washington, than we're doing right now. Well, good morning. I'm Scott Rigell. This is the John Fredericks Show, and it is 6:21 a.m. And Ken, what's going on with traffic and weather, or whatever else is on your mind?
Well, we got a few things going on, but usual backups in the usual locations heading to the base 564 westbound Terminal Boulevard, and no major backups, delays in any of the bridges of the tunnels other than heading into the base this morning. We do have a crash just got in a few moments ago in Norfolk Ocean View Avenue between Granby Street and Chesapeake Boulevard. A motorcycle is involved with that, so probably injuries, so be on the lookout for fire and rescue going to that one. We got some morning showers on our way, and then just plain rain by the afternoon with a high of 62. That rain will continue into tonight with a low of 59. Cloudy, windy rain. We might see some thunderstorms tomorrow in November. Well, we are in Tidewater after all. That'll end by the late afternoon. The highs will begin around 63 degrees middle of the day, but then falling into the 40 degree range, around 45 by late afternoon. But then for Thanksgiving Day, sunny skies and a high of 40 degrees. We'll be back with more of the John Fredericks Show. Special guest host Scott Rigell in our studios. We'll be back with the John Fredericks Show on K-Talk 1650 at 6:22.
Call Rose Brothers Heating and Air. We're old enough to trust and small enough to care. Rose Brothers Heating and Air at 898-3051. And we'll be right there.
If your air won't blow, let us know. Call Rose Brothers at 898-3051. And we'll be right there and we'll get the job done. The number again, 898-3051. That's 898-3051.
Rose Brothers Heating and Air at 898-3051. And we'll be right there.
Are you ready to finish out 2013 on a strong note? Your computer systems have the energy to finish the rest of the year out with a bang. At Providence Computers, we want to help you energize your home and business computer systems and send your students off to school with confidence. We provide excellent choices and options for upgrades to make your computers perform powerfully. Faster hard drives, more RAM, a backup drive, new virus software, or a refurbished laptop. Visit our store at 1421 Council Road in Chesapeake at Volvo. Finish 2013 strong by calling 382-7768 or visit us on the web, providencecomputers.com.
Good morning. It is 6:23, John Fredericks Show, and my name is Scott Rigell. I'm your guest host this morning. It's a real privilege to host the show. I hope John's getting some sleep this morning, and I was delighted that he asked me to host the show. If you're just tuning in, I was walking through a wonderful document that I've rediscovered. I'd read it before, but I've read it again recently, and that is Washington's farewell address to us. He really was our founding father, and he was giving us his best counsel and his perspective in this letter that he wrote to the American people. And with respect to partisanship, he wrote this. He said, "Let me now take a more comprehensive view and warn you in the most solemn manner against the baneful effects of the spirit of party generally. This spirit, unfortunately, is inseparable from our nature, having its root in the strongest passions of the human mind. It exists under different shapes in all governments, more or less stifled, controlled, or repressed. But in those of the worst, the popular form, it is seen in its greatest rankness, and it is truly their worst enemy." President Washington warned us about deep, divisive partisanship, and I can give you a report from the front lines. This is exactly where we are in Washington, and it's extremely troubling. One could argue that the less laws Congress passes, the better off we are. Well, indeed, that is what's happening. This Congress has been rated objectively, empirically, as the least productive Congress in many, many decades. And if we were, again, headed in a good direction and our fiscal situation was acceptable, you could actually circle the wagons around gridlock and say, look, let's lock in good performance. But we are not there. We're in a tough situation. We're not creating the kind of jobs, the good-paying jobs that we need to. And there are so many ways that we can unleash the incredible job-creating potential of the American entrepreneur, principally around energy. And we're going to talk about that later with Representative Scalise and the tremendous opportunity we have in the 2nd Congressional District and across Virginia to grow jobs and grow our economy and give our young people hope for a great paying job through energy. We're going to talk about how we can do that. But right now, what do we got? We've got full not a literal shutdown, but we've got full gridlock. And here are the things that I think we need to do to break through this. Each single element is not sufficient on its own, but the sum of all of them gives us a path forward to break through this. The first, to me, is to identify the core principles that should guide us. What are the foundational principles that have undergirded and strengthened our country from its very beginning? We're walking through some of those this morning by revisiting Washington's farewell address. And the second is to elevate the facts of a matter, and to identify them and to really religiously pursue them. If they support a talking point that we've been holding, terrific. If not, the facts always trump. Start out with where is the common ground? I've found in my journey in this season of public service, as I call it, that there really is far more common ground out there than you would know just listening to commentators or even many elected officials. And we need to have the courage to say where there is common ground. I'll give you one example. I just don't concede to my Democratic friends that Republicans don't care about the environment, for example. I share with them that, look, my Democratic friends may care as much about the environment as I do, but they do not care more. Now, conversely, there's a kind of the stereotype that our Democratic friends don't care at all about the budget. Well, I can tell you, at least privately and in many cases publicly, there is deep concern, and rightly so, because we can't stay on this path that we're on now. And my Democratic friends, many of them, share that view. The idea of elevating civility, this is not weakness. Civility is not weakness. And I think we need to rediscover as Americans what it means to elevate citizenship, and part of it is elevating the level of civility. Presuming that our friends on the other side, want to do what's right for our country. And look, I'm not dealing with this out of naivete, but civility has got to be there. I think of it as really one of the threads that hold us together as a people. And here, in closing, before we get to the news, I want to cover this too, because this is an important topic, and it's not an easy one to navigate through, but it's absolutely essential. Principled compromise. It's difficult to even, say the word sometimes, compromise, but it's absolutely essential. And I'm not saying, in fact, I reject the idea of compromising on principle. No, I'm not referring to that. I'm referring to principled compromise, that compromise which is essential, certainly in this divided government, in order to advance some solution set. We can pass with 233 Republican votes a bill with no Democratic support. We can thump our chest and say, look, we showed them. The bill goes nowhere in the Senate, certainly doesn't get to the president for signature. That may feel good in some cases, it's a messaging bill or something like that, but it's not advancing job creation, and it's not getting a hold of our fiscal trajectory. So we've got to break through this. I think of it as a conservative pragmatist approach, a conservative pragmatic approach to governance, and it's not an easy thing to find. It really isn't, but that's what I'm in pursuit of, in order to break the impasse so that we can meet our obligation to the next generation of Americans. Ken, we're ready for some news.
Let's do it. Good morning, everybody. State Senator Creed Deeds is blaming the Rockbridge Area Community Services Board, a local agency that administers mental health and substance abuse services, for the incident last week that resulted in his stabbing and the suicide of his son, Austin Gus Deeds. While the 2009 Democratic nominee for Virginia governor said it was too soon to talk in great detail about his son's death, he said he has very strong opinions about the CSB and the responsibility. Senator Deeds was stabbed in the face and chest by his son after an argument last Tuesday outside their rural Bath County home. Gus Deeds was later found inside, dying of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He had undergone a psychiatric evaluation the day before under an emergency custody order, but was returned home after officials said no psychiatric bed could be located. 3 nearby hospitals confirmed that they had space, but were never contacted. Both Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell and the state's Inspector General have launched investigations into what went wrong. Virginia election officials have certified Democrat Mark Herring as the winner of the November 5th election for Attorney General by a 165-vote margin, and giving Republican Mark Obenshain 10 days to request a recount. In addition, the certification came with question from State Board of Elections Chairman Charlie Judd, who voted to certify but noted, quote, reservations about the integrity of the data due to the lack of uniformity in vote tabulations between localities. Political observers suspect Judd is referring to questions about how Fairfax County gave provisional ballot voters more time than other communities to prove their vote should count. Republicans have complained that the Fairfax process appeared to help Herring. Since the election, Herring and Obenshain have both announced transition teams. The Virginia Beach school bus driver who rear-ended a disabled car last month on Holland Road near Independence Boulevard, leaving a Navy sailor dead and injuring several students, will not be charged with any crimes. Virginia Beach Commonwealth's attorney Harvey Bryant says he reviewed the evidence from the Virginia Beach Police Department's fatal crash team and concluded, with their concurrence, that there is no basis to charge the school bus driver with involuntary manslaughter or reckless driving in the death of 27-year-old Christian Montes. Police and prosecutors have not released the name of the bus driver. 2 former sailors convicted of stealing body armor from Oceana Naval Air Station and selling it to an undercover federal agent have been sentenced to 3 years probation. Antoine Lindsay and Robert Brick pleaded guilty to theft of government property. They sold the stolen body armor on multiple occasions to an undercover Naval Criminal Investigative Service agent during the summer of 2011 in response to an ad, which was posted by the agents as part of an investigation into the illegal sale of government property. Whatever you do, don't let anyone at the National Hurricane Center pick your lottery numbers. The 2013 Atlantic season, predicted back in May to be busier than normal, turned out to be more meh, with the fewest hurricanes since 1982. Forecasters had predicted 13 to 20 named Atlantic storms, 7 to 11 strengthening into hurricanes, 3 to 6 that became major hurricanes. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration officials had said there was a 70% chance that this year is going to be more active than an average hurricane season. Well, there were 13 named storms, right on target, but only 2, Ingrid and Umberto, became hurricanes, neither considered to be major. NOAA says 2013 will rank as the 6th least active year since 1950. News brought to you by Hargrave Military Academy. Attend an educational and informative open house event at Hargrave Military Academy in Chatham, Virginia, Saturday, December the 7th, 12:30 p.m. For more information, visit hargrave.edu. Hargrave Military Academy, build his future.
It's football season again, and Long Jewelers knows you want to have your butt parked in the recliner all weekend, every weekend.
Honey, we need to shop for the kids, and don't forget Sunday dinner.
Panic sets in.
Did you take my car in for the engine check light?
You're hours away from kickoff, and you have no game plan. Go long. That is, go to Long Jewelers. Call it a bribe. Call it placating. But the fact is, Long Jewelers knows that women are big football fans too and enjoy the games just as much as the guys.
Offsides, you're crazy. Come on, ref.
There may be one thing they enjoy more, a gift from Long Jewelers. Long Jewelers on the Boulevard is your friend for the football season and any season, giving you the home field advantage you need. Surprise your cheering section with a selection from Longs, and then celebrate at halftime. Fan or not, enjoy your upcoming football marathons by keeping her on your team with the best game plan of the season. A trip to Long Jewelers on the Boulevard at 2965 Virginia Beach Boulevard at North Lynn Haven.
6:34 is the time. One of the biggest problems we have this morning is a crash in Norfolk involving a motorcyclist. Injuries, I'm sure, are involved in this one. It's on Ocean View Avenue. It's between Granby Street and Chesapeake Boulevard. So if that's part of your morning commute, look out for fire and rescue, and they'll probably block off part of that road, if not the whole thing. The other thing is we have a superload move. It's a big old transformer. They're moving through Suffolk today from 9 a.m. to noon along Hull Street, Kilby Avenue, Route 13, Dill Road, Hunter Street, and Hosier Road. So just to be aware, there's going to be a big old thing. It's a big old transformer moving through Suffolk today. Downtown Tunnel westbound closes one last time this week, 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. Through the holiday weekend. We'll have it open until Sunday night, then they'll resume those closings again overnight. Over the downtown tunnel eastbound, still light traffic. No backups or delays there. Westbound, different story. Tidewater Drive is where you'll find that backup. Midtown tunnel eastbound, just a slow down at the merge coming in off the West Norfolk Bridge and Martin Luther King Freeway. Steady still westbound. Steady roll of traffic 64 east at the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. Westbound is light traffic. Steady northbound Monitor Merrimack and James River Bridge. Heading to the base on 564 westbound, you find the backup just past Terminal Boulevard. Cloudy skies today, becoming windy. Some steady rain by the afternoon, and a lot of it, we're told, somewhere between 1 and 2 inches of rain expected, a high of 62 degrees. Cloudy, windy rain tonight, a low of 59. Cloudy, windy rain, possible thunderstorms tomorrow, ending by late afternoon. The high starting off around 63 degrees midday, but then falling to around 45 degrees later in the afternoon. Thanksgiving Day's forecast, sunny skies, a high of 40 for Black Friday. Getting out and doing your shopping, sunny skies, and a high of 46 degrees. Then for the weekend, Saturday, partly cloudy, 49. Cloudy Sunday, a high of 59 degrees. The Chris Weaver Real Estate Team, you know they're the experts in buying, selling, or leasing your home, getting it done right. Also, if you need the real value of your property, you can text your home address to Chris Weaver at 986-0886 and get the real value of your property in about 30 minutes or less. You can find them online at chrisweaver.com with a K, K-R-I-S Weaver.com. Call them up, 340-5555, 340-4 5s in a row.
You're listening to The John Fredericks Show.
Dealing with your pharmacy should be effortless.
That's why you need to make Heidenwood Pharmacy your family pharmacy. Locally owned and operated since 1959 in Newport News, you'll get quality, friendly, and efficient service. And if you need it delivered locally, there's only one call to make: Heidenwood Pharmacy, 595-1151. Most insurances are accepted, including Express Scripts, Anthem, Medicare D programs, and TRICARE beneficiaries. Heidenwood Pharmacy is just a phone call away. 595-1151.
That, my friend, is a work of art. You ought to expand your business.
Where would I start?
Bayport Credit Union.
The credit union that's been here since my grandpa was a kid?
Same one. Bayport has a complete line of services for small businesses. You get quick loan decisions, and they can offer you flexible terms like they did for me.
Well, then, Bayport's the place to start.
When you're ready to do business, we're ready. Bayport Credit Union. Call 757-928-8850 or click bayportcu.org for products tailored for small businesses. Federally insured by NCUA.
We just feel more pressure needs to be brought on Iran rather than to make this deal and take the pressure off of Iran. We needed to continue to ratchet up those sanctions until Iran was willing to agree to give up its right to enrich, to give up its nuclear program. Until they do that, they're still on the road to having the capability for undetectable nuclear weapons breakout. Once before, we had an agreement with Iran, they walked away from it, and the IAEA had an agreement with Iran, and Iran went ahead and built an enriched facility building and lied to the IAEA about that.
I've crafted legislation to hold the administration and the international community's feet to the fire over the next 6 months to ensure that this interim deal is not the norm. We see the reaction in Iran right now. I mean, they're spiking the football in the end zone, saying that, look, we've consolidated our gains, we've relieved sanctions, we're going to have the right to enrich. We've seen what's happened in North Korea. They now have nuclear weapons, and I don't want to see that happen in Iran.
It's disappointing to me that Iran is still going to be allowed to enrich while they're talking. I do think sanctions should always be hanging there because that's what brought Iran to the table in the first place, and I don't think you make them bargain in good faith by going squishy.
They do view this administration as weak, and I think from their standpoint, they see this as their window of opportunity to negotiate with an administration that has shown that it really doesn't have a lot of the intestinal fortitude that other administrations have had.
What have we done? We've taken away the one thing. We've given them just enough breathing room, the one thing that brought them to the table. Very strong bipartisan opposition to the deal. Our Arab League partners don't like the deal. Israel doesn't like the deal. And we may have just encouraged more violence in the future than we have stopped.
Good morning. Welcome to the John Fredericks Show. I'm Scott Rigell, your guest host this morning. It is 6:39 a.m., and I am delighted to welcome just a wonderful guest, Jason Miyares. He was a prosecutor for the Commonwealth of Virginia. He put away the bad guys and did a great job with that. Interestingly, he had a lot to do with me running. And I really think of Jason as a patriot, and I do not use that term lightly. You know, there are Democratic patriots, Republican patriots, independent patriots, but he is a true patriot because he cares deeply about this country. He and a group of other young men in their 30s, late 20s, early 30s, came by my office and said, look, run, and we'll stand with you. And Jason, you have since then you've become just a respected political analyst, advising some of the top leaders in the Commonwealth and beyond. And I'm delighted to welcome you to the show this morning.
Well, thanks. That's quite kind. I might have to bring you around and introduce me everywhere.
Well, listen,
that's a great intro. Thank you very much.
Well, I know that you're an evening person. I'm more of a morning person, so I really appreciate you getting up this morning. And listen, I want to talk about just where we are as a Republican Party in the Commonwealth. And I've got a lot of notes here, but the one that I just wrote down, and it's the one that's really on my mind, is that more often than not, I think of the Democrats as being unified, and I think of us as, having these different parts. You hear about the establishment, the Tea Party, the Libertarians, and, we're having difficulty. We seem like we're kind of herding cats at different times, and so Is there truth to that? Is my perspective correct?
Well, if you want to use a football analogy, they say winning is the cure-all for any disagreements within the locker room, and winning does tend to cover up, maybe some minor friction, and losing can amplify it. I guess what I would say is there is definitely some friction right now within the Republican Party, but you got to take a longer view. We have to be very careful that Republicans have always been really good at putting together a circular firing squad and shooting at each other whenever we lose an election. And unfortunately, I think the media facilitates that because they enjoy controversy.
Sure.
But the way I view the modern Republican Party is a little bit like a three-legged stool, and without each leg being equally strong, we're not going to be as effective. So I think you have one stool is definitely the pro-liberty, more libertarian-leaning crowd. I call it the leave us alone. Just get government out of all aspects of our lives. That's one stool. Another stool I would say would be the kind of social conservative traditional values. And then the third stool would be a robust, strong national defense, national security stool. And unfortunately, sometimes one aspect of the party thinks we don't need the other leg of the stool, but you'd have to have all three or it's going to fall down. And I like to say, one of my kind of life phrases that guides me is the person I agree with 90% of the time is not my 10% enemy. And I think it would be appropriate for other members of our party to realize, hey, we're all on the same team. At the end of the day, we all have a lot more that we agree with and disagree. We all want the same goal of less government, less taxation, less regulation, and a stronger America. And
yes,
I think we have to keep that as our guidepost. We'll be much better positioned. But yeah, we've had some tough losses here in Virginia and nationally in the last couple of years, and it takes a lot of introspection. But I'm confident that we're going to end up a better party because we're having this discussion now.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
If we weren't having this discussion, we'd be in a much worse place.
My wife Terry and I, as you well know, I share with people, and there's truth in this, is that Terry and I don't agree on everything, but we know we're headed in the right direction. And that the resentment, the deep resentment that created and fueled the Tea Party, there was a basis for that. The idea that Republicans have been complicit over time in allowing and growing the size of government. I think Medicare Part D was a classic example of that, a benefit added, but no explanation whatsoever as to how we're going to pay for it, whether one supports Medicare Part D or not. The
right.
key is that we needed to pay for it at the time, and we did not. And so there's a basis for that resentment and this really a deep suspicion that, okay, you're seeking office, Mr. Candidate or Ms. Candidate. Yeah, what are you going to do once you get in there? But this idea of unifying the libertarian streak, I tell people, look, I've got a libertarian streak. I'm not a libertarian, but
right.
I've got some of that. There is a profound challenge, I think, that we face in the Republican Party, and I'm glad to hear a bit of optimism there. Now, let's pursue this just a bit more. We had a candidate, a good friend of mine, Ken Cuccinelli, did everything I could to get him elected, irrefutably conservative, and I think met every definition of that. Yet the libertarian. Some, not all, but some within the libertarian movement just couldn't embrace Ken. And, how much of a factor was that?
I think that was a big factor. I think it was a big factor. I still think, all things being said, McAuliffe would have won probably in a two-man race, but we might be in the midst of a recount. But I think it was definitely a factor. I think the Sarvis vote, I think there was three aspects of the Sarvis vote. One, it was a protest vote. There was inevitably voters of all political stripes that just said, I don't like either one of these candidates, and I'm going to signify that by voting for Sarvis. He got higher than I thought. I thought that he would peak at 5%. He got a little over 6% of the vote. I know a lot of the polling had him at 8, 9, and 10%. I think the second aspect of the Sarvis vote was they were that people that naturally would have voted for Ken Cuccinelli, but Sarvis's name and libertarian ID was on the ballot, and they voted for him. So votes that were taken away from him. And I think the third aspect of the service vote, which the media hasn't really talked a lot about, is there was an organization that was set up called Purple PAC that was officially a PAC that was to support libertarian candidates. And it came out shortly before Election Day that Purple PAC, which ran some limited radio and TV and some different media markets, was largely funded by some of Terry McAuliffe's largest donors. So it was clear to me that Terry McAuliffe knew that that Service was going to take away votes from Ken Cuccinelli, which is what I told one of my libertarian friends. Listen, if you don't think Service hurt Ken, don't. The proof is the fact that McAuliffe encourages largest donors to donate to Purple PAC and to help Service. So I think he definitely had an impact. I don't know if he would have in a two-way race if it would have been enough to put Ken over the top. I think if the election was held November 15th instead of the first Tuesday in November, I think Ken might have won if he had a little bit more time. But he had an impact that's undeniable, and it's a shame because, as you pointed out, Ken Cuccinelli is about as of a pro-liberty Republican conservative as you could find, and it's a shame that the Libertarians encourage someone to get in the race and siphon off the votes.
It's 6:47 a.m. I'm Congressman Scott Rigell, and you're listening to the John Fredericks Show. And I have a question for you, Jason. You shared something with me several times, and I think there's a lot of truth in it, and I'd like for you to unpack it for us this morning. The phrase goes something like, it's not a winning strategy to have an increasing share of a decreasing segment of the electorate. Could you walk us through that? What does that mean, and what are the implications of that?
Well, that's one of those hard truths that as a party we have to have a discussion. I know that we talked about this immediately after the 2012 election. And what I mean by that is the Republican Party, as far as, and there's some who think, I don't know if it's rational, but there's some that think this is a winning strategy. But the bottom line is we have a problem as a party to win national elections. We've been trying to win a larger percentage of the white vote. But that is increasingly a shrinking electorate, and the percentage of the white vote nationally for presidential cycles has been dropping since 1988, about 3 points every 4 years. And we as a party have to realize that we either have to expand our reach and expand our message into communities traditionally that we have not done as good of a job, or we're going to become a permanent minority party. And that's just a hard reality. The bottom line is we can look at it two ways. Change is bad, or realize, hey, listen, change presents a great, unique opportunity for us.
Well,
and we need to embrace that.
Absolutely. And I mentioned earlier in the show that I deal with two realities, fiscal and political. And you've confronted head-on the political reality that we face here, and I truly see it as a tremendous opportunity. I have seen in the congressional district that we can win the hearts and the minds and the trust and ultimately the vote of an increasingly diverse electorate with distinctly conservative values and solutions. This can be done. I was, as you know, a consultant was trying to earn our business, not you, of course, but said, look, it doesn't matter what you do, Scott, you'll never get more than 5% of the black vote. And I'm offended by the statement. I really believe that our ideas and values are best for the full fabric of our community. And I appreciate the counsel that you gave me along the way and helped us do that. Hey, one final question for you here, and we'll come back, is Ted Cruz. All right, just give me your perspective here. Is he a person who can win, a person who can, could he unify the Republican Party? I have my own views on that, but I want to hear yours, Jason.
Well, I think Senator Cruz is an interesting such an interesting figure in the Republican Party. I think he in some ways represents, in many ways, a frustration of the base who feels, darn it, will somebody just fight for me? which I can appreciate and identify with. And as a Cuban American, I have a lot of pride in Ted Cruz's story and his rise to success. I think what Ted Cruz has to be able to become a national candidate. I think he could become the Republican nominee in 2016. Absolutely. He is an amazing orator. He was a champion debater. He has an electric biography. But there is an aspect of Ted Cruz that right now he needs to show to the general public that actually his fellow Cuban American in the Senate, I think, has an abundance, Marco Rubio, which is a likability. He needs to really he needs to be able to show that, because at the end of the day, and that may sound trivial to people, but believe it or not, people want to be able to look at their elected officials and identify with them, number one, and like them, and find them trustworthy and agree with their principles. But that is not an insignificant amount. And just to wrap that up, there's a reason why President Obama goes on The View, as much as I think that's somewhat ludicrous. There's a reason why he goes on The View and some of these other shows so often, is because it builds up his likability quotient with American people and voters. And Ted Cruz needs to show that side to him. He needs to poke fun of himself. He needs to, and it may sound trivial to your listeners, but that is a factor that he needs to bring out of himself.
Well, I see him as deeply divisive. I do. And, he was, in many ways, the architect behind the, just what we went through with 16 days of a shutdown and with no real strategy to get out of it. And that's my assessment. It's not all that positive. We share many of the same objectives, but that was not a good showing in my view. Jason, I want you to come back after this quick break, and we'll cover a couple more items. You're listening to the John Fredericks Show. It is 6:53 a.m. I'm your guest host this morning, Scott Rigell.
Hi, I'm Mike Watson, president of CATLab, Accredited Calibration Laboratories. If your job is to ensure the integrity of instrumentation in your facility, you know the importance of a reliable calibration lab. Your company is serious about quality and compliance and relies on your expertise for both. So when it comes to the accuracy of your test equipment, you can rely on us. CATLab is accredited, prompt, and local, and since 1989 has partnered with manufacturers around the globe. Built by technicians for technicians. Visit CATLab at catlab.net.
Relax and be pampered in an authentic and nostalgic sports setting at the Barber Pole Barbershop. 2 locations to serve you in the Greenbrier area of Chesapeake. 1528 Volvo Parkway and 1369 South Military Highway. Our staff are professional, dedicated barbers specializing in flat tops, military cuts, and men's business cuts. All haircuts include a hot lather straight edge shave around the ears and the back of the neck, and finished off with a light shoulder massage. Locally owned and operated and proud to be located in Southampton Roads. The Barber Pole Barbershop, the best of men's grooming in Chesapeake.
Good morning. It's 6:54 a.m. You're listening to the John Fredericks Show. I'm your guest host, Scott Rigell. I have the privilege of serving an amazing congressional district, the 2nd Congressional District of Virginia. It's a beautiful and special place, home to more men and women in uniform than any of the 435 congressional districts in the country. Our guest this morning is Jason Miyares, a respected political advisor. And Jason, again, thank you for coming on the show. And could you give us some prediction, your sense of where the U.S. Senate race might go next year in the Commonwealth?
Well, that's going to depend on what kind of candidate that we put up in 2014. I do think this. I think anybody who thinks Mark Warner is not vulnerable next year in this environment is kidding themselves. People forget that Mark Warner's only had one real competitive race his entire political career. We ran for U.S. Senate against John Warner and lost in the 90s. And then in 2001, somewhat similar to what happened here, where you had a lot of polls that had him winning by 8, 9, or 10 points. And he only defeated Mark Warner by 4 points on Election Day. And then in 2008, he was in the U.S. Senate race against Jim Gilmore, but Jim Gilmore never raised any money, had high unfavorable ratings going into the race. It was never competitive. He was outspent something like 5 to 1. And so, but Mark Warner, even though he has a little bit of the aura of kind of a moderate, he's voted for a lot of very divisive, controversial legislation. And he voted for the stimulus bill, the President Obama stimulus bill. He voted for the Unaffordable Care Act. the health care bill, and he voted just this past week on the nuclear option that basically changed 200-plus years of of legislative procedure in the United States Senate to strip away the filibuster from the minority. And so Mark Warner has some chinks in his armor. It's a matter of, do we put up the right candidate who has the right message, who can really highlight those differences between Mark Warner. But make no doubt about it, at the end of the day, right now, 2014 is going to be dominated by jobs, and it's going to be tied directly to the impact of the health care law. And if what they're predicting in the next 12 months, which is that 70 to 80 million people could lose their employer-provided health insurance. We've already had a lot of individuals, unfortunately myself, who've gotten notice that the Affordable Care Act has canceled their health insurance. But we're talking about employees being told, we have traditionally covered your health insurance, we no longer can afford it, or we've got notification that our plans don't conform to the standards of the Affordable Care Act, therefore we're putting you on these exchanges. 80 million people, that's the estimate, that could happen in the next 12 to 24 months. Anybody doesn't think that has a huge impact on this race when you have Mark Warner with audio and visual tape saying, if you like insurance, you can keep it. That video and that statement could potentially come back and haunt him. I think he's quite vulnerable, and we'll see who we put up. But I think on the optics, he's much more vulnerable than I think people realize.
Well, it is going to be a challenge for every Democrat. Americans across the country, certainly in the Commonwealth, are reeling from the adverse impact of the Unaffordable Care Act. And what you taught me is the importance of recruitment, that one person can influence another in a most positive way. Thank you for your good counsel. Thank you for being a guest this morning. This is the John Fredericks Show. I'm Scott Rigell, your guest host this morning at 6:58. Ken?
All right, take a look at traffic. Starting to look a little better now into the base 564 westbound.
We believe it now opens the door to our going into the larger, more comprehensive arrangement by which Iran will have to prove that its program is really peaceful. Even with the small amount of money being released to them, Iran is going to lose $15 to $20 billion over the next months. This is an enormous price for Iran to continue to pay if they don't live up to their word and prove to us that the program is peaceful.
I would caution the president from overselling this deal because it is not a full dismantling of their program. Remember who we're dealing with. We're dealing with Iran. They are one of the top supporters of terrorism around the world. This is providing them resources and money, and we should not take this lightly. We have to have a full dismantling if we want the world to be safer.
Nothing in this deal requires the destruction of any centrifuges. They're going to continue to be able to replace centrifuges that become inoperable. And I just don't see this movement in the direction of preventing Iran from developing a nuclear weapon at all. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be easing sanctions. Right now, the sanctions are working. They're doing exactly what they're designed to do.
If it's not a full dismantling, I don't think you'll get a bipartisan support inside the House or the Senate for saying that this is a historic deal.
Now is just not the time to ease sanctions when they are working. When you look at what we've really gotten out of this, it's moving us away from the direction of prevention of them developing a weapon.
Good morning. It's 7:11 a.m. I'm Scott Rigell. I'm your guest host this morning on the John Fredericks Show, and we have a terrific guest on the line, a good friend, a tremendous leader in the House of Representatives, very influential. He is the representative from Louisiana's 1st Congressional District, Steve Scalise. And before I toss it to him, I just want to say that he truly is a leader. He is the head of the Republican Study Committee, which within the House of Representatives, within the Republican Conference, is it's the group, I'm part of this, that I think of it as the conscience of the core conservative conscience of our conference, elevating conservative ideas that benefit all Americans, and he heads that up. And there's so much to talk about with Steve, but let's get him on the line and we'll go from there. Steve, good morning and welcome. Thank you so much for being on the show this morning.
Hey, good morning, Scott. It's great to be with you, and I appreciate you including me as you go out and lead this effort.
Well, this is going to go very quickly because there is so much to talk about. I want to lead with this, and we'll get to Iran and your recent trip to Israel. You know, my number one objective, and really that of our conference, is job creation. There's no better a phrase really for someone to hear than these words, "You're hired." That's just a life-changing event. This is the way to generate hope and also the tax revenue that we need for better roads and better schools and, you know, growing our economy. And you have just led in this, and you're truly an expert with respect to coastal energy. Can you tell us the potential that's there and what energy has done for your district and the good people of Louisiana?
Sure, Scott. I represent southeast Louisiana in a little town called Port Fourchon, which is actually the hub of all of the oil and gas operations in the deep water of the Gulf of Mexico. And if you look at where America is providing the bulk of the American oil that we actually produce, it's out in the Gulf of Mexico. Over 30% of America's oil is produced in the Gulf of Mexico. And the big finds in the deep water, these are multi-billion-dollar investments, and represent, each deep water rig represents 1,000 American jobs. And of course, if you look at the technology, the things that we've been able to advance over the years, we can now drill in over 5,000 feet of water. And you go down into the surface, and then you go thousands of feet below, and there's these massive reserves of oil.
Yes.
That is American energy and American jobs. And I think the great opportunity we've got, Scott, and it's not just in the deep waters of the Gulf of Mexico, of course, off the coast of Virginia, you've got that same opportunity where right now the federal government is blocking you from going and developing reserves in Virginia. You've got a number of other states that want to explore more for American energy. And these are great jobs, but it's also American energy independence, the ability for us to stop having to send billions of dollars over to these Middle Eastern countries for our energy. And by the way, these Middle Eastern countries are using the billions of dollars we send them every year against us, against our troops.
Absolutely.
And so if we can actually open up more vast reserves, not just offshore, but even onshore with the shale plays that we're seeing across the country. The lowest unemployment in the nation is in North Dakota because they're able to drill and hydraulically fracture for shale energy. And so we've got so many opportunities, and even with our friend Canada, with the Keystone XL pipeline, Canada wants to send us 1 million barrels of oil a day. And all the president has to do is say yes, and they'll spend billions of dollars of their money, private money, creating thousands more American jobs. Again, 1 million barrels a day that we'd be getting from a friend in Canada that we don't have to be getting from Middle Eastern countries who don't like us. So all of this combined shows you that we can be completely independent from Middle Eastern oil, literally, with just minor changes in federal policy where the federal government's right now blocking us from our own energy and our own jobs.
I'm like a coiled spring, wanting to help like you, and we advanced a bill through the House, and I appreciate your assistance with that. You serve on the influential Energy and Commerce Committee, and, you know, we have complete alignment here, Steve, in Virginia. I ran on it. Governor McDonnell supports it. The General Assembly, the House, and the House of Delegates and the Senate want it. Indeed, our 2 U.S. senators, both Democrats, support it. There is only one roadblock to the 18,000 local jobs, good-paying jobs that can and eventually, with perseverance, be created here in Virginia, and that's the administration. You're absolutely right. Through the Secretary of Interior, it's a full stop, and you really can't reconcile the administration's stated desire to create jobs with policies like that irrefutably are holding hardworking Americans who want to go to work from having that opportunity. And you were kind enough to host me and John Barrow, our Democratic friend from Georgia, and also Robert Hurt, a congressman from Virginia. We all went down there, and you were kind enough to just tell us everything that you knew about it, about energy, and you hosted us for a wonderful Louisiana dinner there, which was wonderful, and Port Fourchon. I've been there, as you know, and tell us about how it's impacted the tax revenue there and what it's done to allow for health care to be improved in Port Fourchon and the related areas.
Oh, well, really, Scott, when you came down a few months ago, the things you were able to see is just what is involved, the technology, the skills, that are involved and the job opportunities that are involved in opening up American energy. And like you said, within the Department of Interior, the rules and regulations already exist. The only thing that's blocking us, and especially your state in Virginia, from going forward and creating those jobs there are the federal policies. And so this should be a state-by-state decision. If a state like Virginia wants to explore for energy off of their coast, using the existing rules that are already there that we use in Louisiana, you ought to be able to do that. That ought to be your decision. If a state like California says, no, we don't want to help create America's energy, then that should be their prerogative. But they shouldn't be able to participate in the revenues that are already generated, and Virginia should be able to participate. There's billions of dollars not just for the federal treasury to pay down our debt, but also for states that want to actually help us produce American energy. Those states ought to be able to share in the revenue. And what you saw in Fort Fourchon is just, again, tremendously low unemployment. Anybody that wants to work, if you're 20 years old, you could be out of high school with no college education, but just a desire to work hard. You could be making over $60,000 a year to start, doing hard work, which is what our country should encourage, out in the deep waters of the Gulf of Mexico producing energy. And these are jobs that have great career opportunities where you could be making six figures, over $100,000 within a couple of years. And what that provides, not just for health care, but for power, for opportunity for young people to create families and be a part of the American dream. That's what we should be encouraging more of.
There's just so many benefits. And, Steve, this district that I have the privilege to represent has the highest concentration of men and women in uniform in the country, and an incredibly powerful and valued Navy facilities here. Our men and women, sail from our ports here all over the world, preserving freedom. It is true that if to the extent that we decrease our dependence on foreign oil, we will decrease our need to be the policeman in some certain areas, and there's that benefit as well. And it gives hope.
And think about this too, Scott. A lot of your men and women who come home from serving our country, from putting their lives on the line, doing the heroic work that they do, and as you've got such a large population, when they retire, as we're winding down some of our military forces abroad, there would be great job opportunities for them here at home, and they can start a career just coming out of a few years of military service with a great hard work ethic. Those are the kind of work ethic skills that we want in the energy industry. You got that opportunity because of the reserves you've got off the coast of Virginia.
Absolutely.
Just shift right around, and they can be starting a new career in the private sector, making really good money.
And it's a wonderful mix of jobs. Some are very high-tech, high-skilled geologists, with doctorate degrees, very sophisticated machinery, and then there's a full spectrum. You've got the good, hardworking trade skill. The skilled trades are needed. We are so wonderfully equipped here for this. We've got the ports, we've got the deep water, we've got the infrastructure, the shipyards that could build the ships and the rigs that are needed. And, the executives that I met down there and the trip that you hosted for us, they are chomping at the bit. They are ready to come to Hampton Roads and meet with business leaders here, and we're going to follow up on that. Steve, in just a moment, we're going to take a quick break, but when we get back, I want to talk about the Republican Study Committee, what it is, if you could explain it briefly to our listeners, and also what the priorities will be when we get back in session here in a week or so. Well, good morning. It's 7:21 a.m. You're listening to the John Fredericks Show. I'm Scott Rigell, serving the 2nd Congressional District of Virginia, and I'm also your guest host this morning. Ken?
Are you ready to finish out 2013 on a strong note? Your computer systems have the energy to finish the rest of the year out with a bang. At Providence Computers, we want to help you energize your home and business computer systems and send your students off to school with confidence. We provide excellent choices and options for upgrades to make your computers perform powerfully. Faster hard drives, more RAM, a backup drive, new virus software, or a refurbished laptop. Visit our store at 1421 Council Road in Chesapeake at Volvo. Finish 2013 strong by calling 382-7768 or visit us on the web, providencecomputers.com.
That, my friend, is a work of art. You ought to expand your business.
Where would I start?
Bayport Credit Union.
The credit union that's been here since my grandpa was a kid?
Same one. Bayport has a complete line of services for small businesses. You get quick loan decisions, and they can offer you flexible terms like they did for me.
Well, then, Bayport's the place to start.
When you're ready to do business, we're ready. Bayport Credit Union. Call 757-928-8850 or click bayportcu.org for products tailored for small businesses. Federally insured by NCUA.
It's 7:23 a.m. I'm Scott Rigell. I'm your guest host this morning on the John Fredericks Show. Our guest this morning is Congressman Steve Scalise. He's a leader in the House of Representatives on many topics, energy, and also within the Republican Study Committee. And Steve, welcome back to the show, and tell us a bit about the Republican Study, what your priorities are. I also want to leave a few minutes to talk about your trip. You just came back from Israel, I understand. I want to hear more about that and get your thoughts about the Iranian sanctions. But first, let's talk about the RSC. Tell us about it.
Sure, Scott. And as you know, being a member of RSC, Republican Study Committee is 175 members of the House. And really our focus is to push our leadership, make sure, hold them accountable, make sure that they're promoting conservative policies, and ultimately to push and fight for the conservative values that made our country great as it relates to fiscal discipline and getting our economy back on track and standing up for values like religious liberty, which are under attack in Washington too. So our members serve on every committee in Congress, and really it's a great place to go. We meet once a week, and you really talk detailed policy. You talk with other conservative leaders in Congress about the issues not only that are coming up that week, but also looking weeks and months down the road to plan out and lay out the vision to get our country back on track.
We know our Democratic colleagues oftentimes, and it really comes more from the leadership, that they will try to stereotype us as being just against things and not for things. And I think of the RSC as really a conservative think tank. And I appreciate the good work that's being done there. There are so many ideas and practical, wise solutions to increase employment, to decrease the debt. They're all there. Can you direct us to a website or any other resources within the RSC that listeners could access themselves?
Sure. The RSC's website is rsc.scalise, scalise.house.gov. And you can go to our website. You can follow us on Facebook. But the Republican Study Committee, as you said, we've got great thought leaders, people that come up with really good ideas. We file legislation. We push legislation. We've had a number of our bills that RSC members have filed actually go to the House floor and pass the House. Some have even become law. Even in these tough economic times, and especially in the tough political climate, with the president being on the Democratic side, yet we've been able to pass some conservative policy. And, people like Paul Ryan are members of the Republican Study Committee. Paul's at our weekly meetings every week, just like you are, Scott. And the beauty is we get to talk amongst ourselves about how we get our budget balanced. We passed, the RSC actually brought a budget forward this year that balances in 4 years, and while also getting our economy moving again. You do it through job creation, not through raising taxes and growing the size of government. You actually control spending and empower people, give people the opportunity to lead their own course again and get the economy moving. The Republican Study Committee just filed a health care alternative a few months ago. We have a bill called the American Health Care Reform Act. It's not only a repeal bill to repeal the president's health care law, but also it's a replace bill that actually addresses problems like lowering costs, increasing access, making sure people with pre-existing conditions aren't discriminated against, but also making sure that somebody, if they want to buy insurance across state lines because they find a better deal for their family, they'd be able to do that, increasing transparency and costing so you know what things really do cost. So our bill has actually over 100 co-sponsors now, and it's another good example of how our members come up with really good ideas to get our economy moving again and address the problems our country's facing.
Well, just being a deep well to draw from for really good ideas to help our country and improve the lives of hardworking, everyday Americans, really from all walks of life. That's a principal reason that I appreciate the RSC. I'm glad it's there. I appreciate your leadership there. Let's shift now to the Middle East. We have a few minutes left, and I understand that you just returned from Israel. I would want to hear your perspective on this recent agreement with respect to Iran. What's your perspective on that, Steve?
Sure. And Scott, look, this deal that President Obama and Secretary of State Kerry just agreed to with the P5+1 nations is a very naive and dangerous deal. The fact that Iranian sanctions are finally working, we've passed strong legislation with huge bipartisan votes in Congress. In fact, the last bill that the House passed to increase sanctions against Iran to stop their nuclear program had over 400 votes. That means most Republicans and most Democrats voted for these strong sanctions that are finally starting to take effect and bring the Iranian government to their knees and to the negotiating table. And just when this is starting to work, here you've got Secretary of State Kerry flying off to Geneva and agreeing to a deal to start reducing those sanctions on Iran to actually give them breathing room, billions of dollars in cash in breathing room, with nothing in return in terms of winding down the nuclear program. And when I was in Israel 2 weeks ago, we met with a number of Israeli officials, including Prime Minister Netanyahu. And we happened to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu the day that Secretary of State Kerry was also there, telling the Prime Minister that the United States was going to agree to reduce the sanctions. And the Prime Minister could not have been more emphatic in saying, don't do this. This is a bad deal. In fact, Prime Minister Netanyahu called it a very, very bad deal and the deal of the century for Iran. And look, Iran's developed over 18,000 centrifuges to develop uranium and bring it to weapons grade. And they're literally at the point where they're maybe months away from having the capabilities to deliver nuclear weapons to go and attack countries. And they've made it clear they want to eviscerate Israel from the face of the earth, which in and of itself is a violation of world UN sanctions. But they also want to go after the United States, too. This is a major threat not only to our top ally in the Middle East, Israel, but it's a major threat to the United States, and why we would agree to reduce sanctions that are finally working without getting any reduction in Iran's nuclear weapons capabilities in return is just mind-boggling and shows not only, I think, a naive approach by the Obama administration, but a very dangerous approach for America.
Well, Steve, I share your sober assessment of that agreement. I think it's irresponsible, and the nature of the Iranian regime, their public statements with respect to Israel make clear that any definitive movement toward weapons-grade uranium and the development of nuclear weapons is truly and literally unacceptable. And we need to do everything we can, and we will, indeed, through the House of Representatives to make this clear to the administration. Steve, I am so grateful for your leadership at RSC. Thank you for hosting us again and the tour of Port Fourchon, and for introducing to me to so many of your friends. I am looking forward to, and we're working on this right now, to have the top leaders of the business community within Port Fourchon and further out to come to Hampton Roads and walk many of the leaders here in Hampton Roads through the tremendous opportunity we have to create jobs. So thank you again for being on the show, and I look forward to seeing you soon up in the House.
Scott, great being with you, and thanks for your leadership in the House and representing the people of Virginia.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Scott Rigell. I'm guest hosting the John Fredericks Show this morning. It is 7:31 a.m. Ken, you've got it.
Good morning, everybody. State Senator Creed Deeds is blaming the Rockbridge Area Community Services Board, a local agency that administers mental health and substance abuse services, for the incident last week that resulted in his stabbing and the suicide of his son, Austin Gus Deeds. While the 2009 Democratic nominee for Virginia governor said it was too soon to talk in great detail about his son's death, he said he has very strong opinions about the CSB and the responsibility. Senator Deeds was stabbed in the face and chest by his son after an argument last Tuesday outside their rural Bath County home. Gus Deeds was later found inside, dying of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He had undergone a psychiatric evaluation the day before under an emergency custody order, but was returned home after officials said no psychiatric bed could be located. 3 nearby hospitals confirmed that they had space, but were never contacted. Both Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell and the state's Inspector General have launched investigations into what went wrong. Virginia election officials have certified Democrat Mark Herring as the winner of the November 5th election for Attorney General by a 165-vote margin, and giving Republican Mark Obenshain 10 days to request a recount. In addition, the certification came with question from State Board of Elections Chairman Charlie Judd, who voted to certify but noted, quote, reservations about the integrity of the data due to the lack of uniformity in vote tabulations between localities. Political observers suspect Judd is referring to questions about how Fairfax County gave provisional ballot voters more time than other communities to prove their vote should count. Republicans have complained that the Fairfax process appeared to help Herring. Since the election, Herring and Obenshain have both announced transition teams. The Virginia Beach school bus driver who rear-ended a disabled car last month on Holland Road near Independence Boulevard, leaving a Navy sailor dead and injuring several students, will not be charged with any crimes. Virginia Beach Commonwealth's attorney Harvey Bryant says he reviewed the evidence from the Virginia Beach Police Department's fatal crash team and concluded, with their concurrence, that there is no basis to charge the school bus driver with involuntary manslaughter or reckless driving in the death of 27-year-old Christian Montez. Police and prosecutors have not released the name of the bus driver. 2 former sailors convicted of stealing body armor from Oceana Naval Air Station and selling it to an undercover federal agent have been sentenced to 3 years probation. Antoine Lindsay and Robert Brick pleaded guilty to theft of government property. They sold the stolen body armor on multiple occasions to an undercover Naval Criminal Investigative Service agent during the summer of 2011 in response to an ad, which was posted by the agents as part of an investigation into the illegal sale of government property. Whatever you do, don't let anyone at the National Hurricane Center pick your lottery numbers. The 2013 Atlantic season, predicted back in May to be busier than normal, turned out to be more meh, with the fewest hurricanes since 1982. Forecasters had predicted 13 to 20 named Atlantic storms, 7 to 11 strengthening into hurricanes, 3 to 6 that became major hurricanes. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration officials had said there was a 70% chance that this year was going to be more active than an average hurricane season. Well, there were 13 named storms, right on target, but only 2, Ingrid and Umberto, became hurricanes, neither considered to be major. NOAA says 2013 will rank as the 6th least active year since 1950. News brought to you by Hargrave Military Academy. Attend an educational and informative open house event at Hargrave Military Academy in Chatham, Virginia, Saturday, December the 7th, 12:30 p.m. For more information, visit hargrave.edu. Hargrave Military Academy, build his future.
Call Rose Brothers Heating and Air. We're old enough to trust and small enough to care. Rose Brothers Heating and Air at 898-3051. And we'll be right there.
If your air won't blow, let us know. Call Rose Brothers at 898-3051. And we'll be right there and we'll get the job done. The number again, 898-3051. That's 898-3051.
Rose Brothers Heating and Air at 898-3051. And we'll be right there.
The President of the United States is desperate. So begins the plot of America's newest spy novel, The Crown and Cardinal, by Virginia attorney and author Chad Green. It combines the best of spy novels, political intrigue, American history, and the brutal sport of politics set in Virginia's historic triangle. A must-read, riveting, well-written novel, says U.S. Air Force retired Brigadier General Don Streeter. To get your copy of The Crown and Cardinal, visit our Facebook page for a local retailer near you or call 757-320-9949. That's 757-320-9949. Now it's my turn, 7:35, and we're looking at what I thought was a disabled vehicle. Maybe it was a traffic stop. Anyway, it's gone now. It's 64 westbound at Mallory Street. It was over in that left shoulder, but tow truck came, took it away, so that's no longer an issue. I understand there are injuries involved with that crash in Norfolk Ocean View Avenue involving a motorcycle between Granby Street and Chesapeake Boulevard. They should be clearing that scene before too much longer, but still be aware they're probably still working on that. At the downtown tunnel eastbound right now, backed up to Effingham Street. On the westbound side, just a slow down across the Berkeley Bridge, and the downtown tunnel westbound closes again tonight, 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. It'll be open, though, Wednesday through Sunday for the holiday. 464 northbound starting to back up around South Main Street. The Midtown Tunnel eastbound out to the West Norfolk Bridge westbound still steady. Half the road's Bridge Tunnel, though, starting to build up. Backed up to Settlers Landing Road on eastbound 64. Westbound steady. Steady at the Monterey Merrimack James River Bridge, and no backup or delay whatsoever in 564 westbound heading in the base. Got a superload move, a big old electrical transformer that Dominion Virginia Power is going to be moving through Suffolk between 9 a.m. and noon today. Look out for road closures closures and detours around Hall Street, Kilby Avenue, Route 13, Dill Road, Hunter Street, and Hoosier Road. Looking for cloudy skies today, becoming windy. Some steady rain developing by the afternoon. High around 62 degrees. Cloudy, windy, rain tonight, a low of 59. Cloudy, windy, more rain. Possible thunderstorms tomorrow, ending by the late afternoon. Tomorrow's high around midday will be 63, but as we go through the afternoon, those temperatures will start dropping to around 45 degrees. Sunny skies for Thanksgiving Day with a high of 40 degrees. Chris Reaver's real estate team standing by and ready to help you buy, sell, or lease your home, also to get you the real value of your home. If you're thinking about refinancing, you want to know what you got, or if you're just curious, what is that home worth? Well, text your home address to Chris Reaver at 986-0886. That's 986-0886, and get the real value in about 30 minutes or less. You can find Chris Reaver online at KRISweaver.com or call him up at 340-5555. That's 340-4 5s in a row.
You're listening to The John Fredericks Show.
It's football season again, and Long Jewelers knows you want to have your butt parked in the recliner all weekend, every weekend.
Honey, we need to shop for the kids, and don't forget Sunday dinner.
Panic sets in.
Did you take my car in for the engine check light?
You're hours away from kickoff, and you have no game plan. Go long. That is, go to Long Jewelers. Call it a bribe. Call it placating. But the fact is, Long Jewelers knows that women are big football fans too and enjoy the games just as much as the guys.
Offsides, you're crazy. Come on, ref.
There may be one thing they enjoy more, a gift from Long Jewelers. Long Jewelers on the Boulevard is your friend for the football season and any season, giving you the home field advantage you need. Surprise your cheering section with a selection from Long's, and then celebrate at halftime. Fan or not, enjoy your upcoming football marathons by keeping her on your team with the best game plan of the season. A trip to Long Jewelers on the Boulevard at 2965 Virginia Beach Boulevard at North Lynn Haven.
For the first time in a decade, we've halted the progress on Iran's nuclear program. Key parts of the program will be rolled back. International inspectors will have unprecedented access to Iran's nuclear-related facilities. So this will help Iran from building a nuclear weapon. And over the coming months, we're going to continue our diplomacy with the goal of achieving a comprehensive solution that deals with the threat of Iran's nuclear program once and for all.
Here comes a man with a look in his eye. It's fed on nothing but full of pride.
None of that's going to be easy. Huge challenges remain, but we cannot close the door on diplomacy, and we cannot rule out peaceful solutions to the world's problems. We cannot commit ourselves to an endless cycle of conflict. Tough talk and bluster may be the easy thing to do politically, but it's not the right thing for our security.
Every single one of us, the devil inside, devil inside, devil inside. Every single one of us, the devil inside.
It's long past time to fix our broken immigration system. The only thing standing in our way right now is the unwillingness of certain Republicans in Congress to catch up with the rest of the country.
Here come the world, the look in the tide. Future uncertain, but certainly slides.
Good morning. You're listening to the John Fredericks Show. I'm Scott Rigell. I'm your guest host this morning. It is 7:40 a.m. And Ken, you're right. It is crisp outside. Actually cold. Thomas Jefferson wrote this when he of what he found when he first entered the Virginia legislature in 1769. He said, "The difficulties with our representatives were of habit and despair, not of reflection and conviction." Well, a leader, a true leader who is bringing reflection and conviction and good judgment and great ideas to the Virginia Senate is Jeff McWaters, a close and trusted friend, a wonderful public servant. Jeff, welcome to the John Fredericks Show.
Well, thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Congressman. Is there anything that you can't do? Car dealer, family man, you're in business, and now Congress of the United States, and then a morning talk show host. I don't know where the list is.
No, the reciprocal is true. I watched you, Jeff, I remember vividly you putting down the logo for AmeriGroup. You said, "Scott, what do you think of this?" And it went from that conception of an idea all the way to a publicly held company, which was employing, I think at the time, more than 2,000 people in Hampton Roads. what an incredible story of job creation that is. And I truly, when you got elected, I thought, I sleep a little better knowing that good men and women like Jeff McWaters are serving, looking over the Commonwealth's finances. Jeff, we're going into the longer session. There's a short session, and it alternates each year, of course. What are the key issues coming up in the Virginia legislature, and what are you going to be faced with, and what can you work with this new Governor McAuliffe on, and what's going to be tough?
Yeah, thanks for asking. It is a 8-week session. This is the session where we will be looking at Governor McDonnell's first full-on proposed budget. It's kind of odd sometimes how that works. In the Virginia legislature, the outgoing governor actually puts forth the new budget, and then the new incoming governor would make changes and amendments to that budget. But it works pretty good, and it's worked quite good for several hundred years, and Virginia is a well-thought-of, well-managed state. We have the things that are typical, I think, that kind of from year to year seem to come up in the big arguments. One I find pretty incredible from a business perspective is Virginia's right-to-work laws. I think it's something that has separated Virginia from the northeastern and more industrialized states from years back to allow us to start new companies, to have entrepreneurial ventures like we did at AmeriGroup, and not necessarily have to worry about the threat of unionization. We know in some cases that's been good, in some cases it hasn't been. So we want Virginia's companies and individuals to be able to make those kind of decisions. So that right-to-work law, it continues to be something that comes up. We'll have the expansion of the president's health care plan, the possibility of expanding President Obama's plan to more than 400,000 Virginians. That will be a huge debate. We'll continue debating offshore natural gas, even though, as you know, that's more of a federal issue. We still have a lot of issues at the state level on that. And the list goes on. Big issues. Transportation, I didn't even touch on that, is another huge one. All issues that affect our region. People, I think, sometimes think once we pass a rule, once we pass a law, that it's over. It's not so. We did pass a big transportation bill last year, but we'll have to go up and fight for our resources in this part of the state.
Governor-elect McAuliffe was unequivocal in his statements with respect to Medicaid expansion. He said, I believe, I won't sign a budget unless it includes that. So it looks to me, as a Virginian, looks to me like we're headed for, well, I guess I'd call it the showdown at the OK Corral. Is that an accurate assessment here?
Well, it's possible. I hope not. I hope that's campaign rhetoric. I hope that's not how he intends to lead the Commonwealth of Virginia. That would not be the Virginia way. That may be how they do it up there where you guys operate from time to time. But the Virginia way is for men of good reason and to sit down, and women of good reason to sit down and really work through these issues. And so I hope we'll do that. It's a tremendous risk and cost. It's we call it expanding Medicaid, but it's truly the expansion of the president's health care plan, President Obama's health care plan. That's the second part of it. It's including health care coverage for people who make money but don't make enough to qualify for Medicaid. And so while on the one hand kind of our Judeo-Christian values would suggest that we want to take care of everybody, on the other hand, it's pretty hard to do, and it's going to be extremely expensive for the federal government and the Commonwealth to do it, some 400,000 Virginians. So I'm hopeful we come up with some alternatives to make health care affordable and accessible to this group of hardworking Virginians, rather than the taxpayers, who is another very hardworking group of Virginians, having to pay that bill.
Jeff, it's been my experience in the 2nd District and just my travels that there are thousands. I haven't spoken to thousands, but I know just as it's multiplied across the Commonwealth, who truly are reeling from the adverse impact of the Unaffordable Care Act. Are you hearing that? I mean, are you hearing of people losing insurance? And just describe, if you would, your own journey there.
Well, it's really unfortunate. The process, the law, how it was created in the first place, the box it put us into. Look, we all know there are problems with our healthcare system. We know there are problems with health insurance. There are better ways to approach it, and I think more democratic ways where you can get people more on board with the process rather than the way it was handled 3 or 4 years ago by the president. But yeah, now here we are. We were telling people all through the presidential election, et cetera, that this system will not just affect the people that don't have insurance. It's going to affect the people that do have insurance. Why? Because the president and Congress, and its wisdom, and you fought against that, I know, we're in the process of, trying to say that, look, we think we know better than the people who purchase their own health insurance what they need. So we're going to change the policies. We're going to make them more expensive. And then for the people that don't have health insurance, we're going to make them become part of the insurance pool, and then those people who currently have insurance are going to have to pay for that. So you have two things happening. You have benefit changes and the mix of people in the pool changing. And so people have had health insurance policies that have been happy with them or reasonably happy with them and could afford them are going to lose their coverage and have to pay more perhaps. That's happening often. So far in Virginia, we don't know exactly, but I've seen estimates that over 1 million people going forward over the next 12 months will be getting these letters suggesting that their insurance policy is no longer in effect.
Well, there's some critical decisions coming up before the Virginia legislature. My next guest is a mutual friend, someone both you and I really have a lot of respect for, Wayne Coleman. He is now the Republican candidate for the 6th Senate District in Virginia. And just a minute or so, Jeff, could you just tell me the importance of that election and why it is so critical?
Well, currently we stand tied at 20-20 in the Virginia Senate, and our Republican Governor Bill Bolling had been the tiebreaker for the last 4 years that I had served up there. And I think if you look at Virginia, we did a good job in the last 4 years on transportation, taxes, quality of government, quality of life in Virginia, et cetera. Well, that balance now could be taken out of control by having a new lieutenant governor who's now a Democrat. And so winning this 21st seat gives us the advantage of being able to continue with many of the policies we've been pushing for over the last 4 years in terms of business. Wayne Coleman is a businessman. He's from Norfolk. He built a big business there, and he is very familiar with the port. His son is going to be able to continue to run that business as Wayne pursues this endeavor. But, Scott, let me just tell you something else about Wayne, other than the fact that he's a businessman, and I'll try to make this quick, and has a ton of experience in Norfolk with all the issues in Norfolk. He's running against a gentleman, and a fine gentleman, from the Eastern Shore, from the northern part of the Eastern Shore, Accomack County. And so the good people of Norfolk, I think, at least in this cycle, deserve to be represented by someone who is understanding of the big issues in the center population, Norfolk. Now, look, Wayne is certainly familiar with the Eastern Shore. The mayor of Tangier has spent a lot of time with Wayne. Others on the Eastern Shore, he serves on the Bay Bridge Tunnel Commission, so he's very familiar with the Eastern Shore issues. He can represent Matthews and the Eastern Shore very well. But if I'm a business person living in Norfolk with the major issues we have in this economy and with our port, I want to depend on someone who's lived in my city and who understands these issues with the port. And I think that's why Wayne is so uniquely qualified, and we really need him as the 21st vote in the Senate of Virginia.
That is well said. Jeff, thanks so much for your leadership in the Virginia Senate. Thank you for being on the John Fredericks Show this morning. I'm Scott Rigell. I'm your guest host. It is 7:50 a.m. Our next guest is right after a short break will be Wayne Coleman, the candidate in the 6th Senate District of Virginia. Thanks again, Jeff.
If you are currently renting your home, you are overpaying. You can now save hundreds every month. Stop renting and start buying. At Veteran Loan Funding, we serve those who serve us, and it is our duty to get people into the home of their dreams. Using your VA benefits to purchase your new home is now easier than ever. Interest rates are only going higher, so now is the time to cash in on discounted home prices and historically low interest rates. Veteran Loan Funding's dedicated VA loan specialist will walk you through the process and have you complete your home purchase in 30 days or less. Also, when using your VA benefits to purchase a home, you can do it with zero money down. Why bother with first month's rent and an outrageous security deposit when you can spend thousands less and get so much more? Call Veteran Loan Funding at 1-800-601-3878 or visit veteranloanfunding.com. Once again, Veteran Loan Funding, 1-800-601-3878 and online at veteranloanfunding.com.
Is your son dependable and reliable? Can he follow through on his obligations? Does he desire to be a leader? Then raise your expectations. Hargrave Military Academy builds a young man's academics, athletics, leadership, and spirituality. The whole person in a challenging instructional environment. On Saturday, December 7th at 12:30 p.m., Hargrave invites you and your family to an open house event on Hargrave's military campus in beautiful Chatham, Virginia. Meet with instructors and cadets, engage in questions with other families. Discover how Hargrave instills character and values into each cadet. This month's character theme is courage. Ask why that is so critical. Hargrave serves 7th to 12th grade. Build his future at Hargrave Military Academy, just 30 minutes north of Danville. Attend Hargrave's open house on Saturday, December 7th at 12:30 p.m. For details, call 800-432-2480. That's 800-432-2480. That's 800-432-2480. Or visit hargrave.edu. That's hargrave.edu.
Want to chime in with your comments on The John Fredericks Show? Comment on our Facebook page at facebook.com/The John Fredericks Show and let John know what you think. Now, back to your host, John Fredericks.
Good morning. It is 7:50, I guess about 7 or 8, 53. There you go. I'm Scott Rigell. I'm your guest host this morning of the John Fredericks Show.
You're surrounded by cuckoo
There
clocks.
you
Have
go.
you noticed
Listen,
that?
I really appreciate the help. My good friend and a wonderful candidate for the 6th District of Virginia, the 6th Senate District of Virginia, is calling in, I think, any minute here. Wayne is a businessman, and what I value about that, I think it's really helped me in my public service, is that business folks just have a real bias toward action, of getting things done, dealing with hard facts. And Wayne is on the line this morning, and it's my pleasure to welcome back to the John Fredericks Show the 6th Senate District of Virginia candidate, Republican candidate, Wayne Coleman. Wayne, good morning. Welcome back to the John Fredericks Show.
Good morning, Scott. Thank you for having me.
Wayne, tell us about your background a bit. I think it'd be helpful to kind of walk through that and how that aligns with the skill set that's needed to help the Commonwealth in job creation and really setting the Commonwealth on the strongest possible path for the next generation of Virginians.
Well, I'd be glad to. My last 40 years have been spent in the maritime industry here in the Port of Virginia and involving international transportation and how I feel like that helps not only Virginians but the whole U.S. is that we're in a global commerce now, whether like it or not, and I think it gives opportunity to manufacturers. I've had many occasions where customers come to me and say, we just located an additional 30% of our market share, and it's over in another country overseas, and that gives us an opportunity. And it, as a businessman, you can appreciate that reduce the risk because it spreads it over a wider area, so that it doesn't have as much of an impact on economic downturns.
The Port of Virginia, and you really understand that because of the nature of the business that you created with all the jobs that you created there. It's a family-run enterprise, and I've enjoyed getting to know more about it. The alignment between your job experience and what's needed to help grow the port, to me, it's just seamless. And what are the opportunities that we have at the port? I know at the federal level, I'm fighting to make sure we get the funding for the full 55-foot depth so we can handle the post-Panamex ships and that side of the house, the federal side of the house. What can happen at the state level to really leverage that tremendous asset, that natural, you could say, indeed, God-given asset that we have here, the Port of Hampton Roads?
Well, I think there's multiple things we can do. Certainly, the Heartland Corridor expansion a couple of years ago offered shorter times and more efficiency for customers in the Midwest. The opening of the Panama Canal expansion offers alternatives to the Suez Canal for shipping lines going in and out of the East Coast. I see the container terminals and the growth in container traffic because of our closeness to the open ocean and the depth of our harbors with unrestricted depth and overhead restrictions, we have an opportunity to expand the container terminals. I've been a big advocate for the expansion and development of the Craney Island, which takes a lot of congestion out of downtown Norfolk and puts it over on the other side of the river. But I also think that we've done a good job in container terminal traffic, containerized cargo, but we have a great opportunity. I think we need to leverage a little bit more in the bulk commodities. We handle a lot of coal. It's the leading tonnage port for coal in the United States, and I think that we have opportunities at grain, at forest products, wood pellets. We have opportunities at many other products that we don't have to wait for a drought in the Midwest to take advantage of.
Well, Wayne, you're dialed in on the specifics. It's just clear that you're speaking from and pulling from a deep reservoir of firsthand knowledge of all of this. We're down to about just less than a minute or so before we need to take a break, but I know we have a mutual friend in Mayor Uker up at Tangier Island, and what a special place that is. Just give me your impressions of the island and our watermen and their families and how they contribute to the economy, not just on the Eastern Shore, but just the Virginia economy.
Well, I grew up in here in the area and knew many watermen that were classmates of mine in high school. And it's an honest, hardworking career that people choose to go into. They put in long hours. It's almost like a farmer. They have all kinds of natural problems that they face. But I think that what we have to do is take some of the regulations off of them, and because it just stifles the free market and creates uncertainty. And I just see our watermen and farmers alike, actually, that just have regulations that are dumped on them and poured on them. And as a businessman, that just creates so much uncertainty. And we need to get that off the backs of these hardworking Americans so that they can prosper and succeed.
Yes, and Wayne, I know you share this view that no one cares more about the water quality, about the harvest, and the sustainability of our oysters and our crabs and related products there than our watermen. And it's an incredible privilege to get to know them. Thank you for being on the show. I'm Scott Rigell, guest host this morning of the John Fredericks Show at 7:59 a.m. Ken?
And we have a couple of bridge openings now. Berkeley Bridge at the downtown tunnel scheduled openings from 9 and 11 o'clock this morning.
We just feel more pressure needs to be brought on Iran rather than to make this deal and take the pressure off of Iran. We needed to continue to ratchet up those sanctions until Iran was willing to agree to give up its right to enrich, to give up its nuclear program. Until they do that, they're still on the road to having the capability for undetectable nuclear weapons breakout. Once before, we had an agreement with Iran. They walked away from it, and the IAEA had an agreement with Iran, and Iran went ahead and built an enriched facility building and lied to the IAEA about that.
I've crafted legislation to hold the administration and the international community's feet to the fire over the next 6 months to ensure that this interim deal is not the norm. We see the reaction in Iran right now. I mean, they're spiking the football in the end zone, saying that, look, we've consolidated our gains, we've relieved sanctions, we're going to have the right to enrich. We've seen what's happened in North Korea. They now have nuclear weapons, and I don't want to see that happen in Iran.
It's disappointing to me that Iran is still going to be allowed to enrich while they're talking. I do think sanctions should always be hanging there because that's what brought Iran to the table in the first place, and I don't think you make them bargain in good faith by going squishy.
They do view this administration as weak, and I think from their standpoint, they see this as their window of opportunity to negotiate with an administration that has shown that it really doesn't have a lot of the intestinal fortitude that other administrations have had.
What have we done? We've taken away the one thing. We've given them just enough breathing room, the one thing that brought them to the table. Very strong bipartisan opposition to the deal. Our Arab League partners don't like the deal. Israel doesn't like the deal. And we may have just encouraged more violence in the future than we have stopped.
Good morning. It's 8:16 a.m. I'm Scott Rigell. I'm your guest host this morning for the John Fredericks Show. Thank you for tuning in. And, you know, we've had an incredible lineup this morning, and we have more good guests coming online shortly. It'll be a total of 3 members of Congress, all of whom are really leading and influencing the direction of our country. We've had a political analyst. We have another one coming up. We had a Senate candidate for a Virginia Senate seat and a Virginia Senator, Jeff McWaters. But with all of that said, I really believe that our next guest is just as important, and perhaps in some ways he is uniquely qualified to comment and provide insight on one of the profound challenges facing the Republican Party. And that is, how do we win? How do we advance our goals and objectives and conservative solution sets with an increasingly diverse electorate? He is a close friend of mine. I spend literally as much time with this young man as I do with my own wife because he's with me. He's part of our congressional team and also on the personal side. I'm speaking of Esmel Meeks. Esmel, good morning.
Good morning, Scott. It's so good to be here with you.
Okay, now how did it feel when that alarm clock went off? What time did you set your alarm, Esmel?
4 a.m. this morning,
4 a.m. Good gracious. And I told the listeners earlier that the only time I get excited about getting up at 4 a.m. is either the privilege to host this show this morning or duck hunting. And it's really been good to be here on the show. Esmel, I'm going to give the listeners a little insight. You're 27 years old.
Yes, sir.
VCU grad.
Yes, sir.
There you go, and a proud VCU grad.
Go Rams.
And listen, it's relevant to this discussion. You're African American.
That's right.
You know, and I bring this up because you and I, as we always say in the car, you know, traveling back and forth to Washington or wherever we're going to an event, we talk about things as they are. This is really important, that we have the courage to thoughtfully address issues. And, you know, we know what the stereotypes are about minority communities, including the African American community and the Republican Party and all of this. And just take this conversation, whatever direction you want to take it. What's been your experience, or what insight, you know, would you offer us here?
Well, I am a Republican as an African American. It's a part of my heritage. The same party of Martin Luther King, Thurgood Marshall, Senator Hiram Rhodes Rebel, who's the first member of Congress, African American member of Congress, and African Americans make up 14% of the population. Yet we only make up 2% of the Republican Party. And I've got a problem with that. Scott, you referenced earlier that folks that have worked with you early on,
yes,
they've told you that you can only get 5% of the African-American vote.
That's right.
And what did we see last election? 12%.
And yes, and I was just honored to get that. And, you know, what a person believes about, you know, their potential to do something really affects their actions. And here, there are some strategists and consultants to Republican candidates saying that we can only get 5% of the black vote. I reject that premise, and I think you're a living testimony of that. When we first met, you weren't a political type, were you?
No, I wasn't. And Scott, when you say that, you can see the stern look on my face. That deeply upsets me to hear that no matter what information is provided, no matter what is said to me, my family, my friends in the African-American community, we won't listen to you. We won't vote for a Republican because of the color of my skin.
Yeah,
and that deeply upsets me, Scott.
As we've gone down this journey, and when you and I met, it was a neat experience. My son Justice introduced us, and you're an entrepreneur, and still have that. If you had any time, I know you'd pursue that a bit more. But you've been kind enough to set aside your time to work with me in this season of public service.
Well, it's a privilege.
Yes. But when you first met me, you really hadn't gotten dialed in politically. So
right.
What about the Republican solution set? What about the Republican values, which I think is so beautifully expressed in the Republican Creed of Virginia? What draws you to believing that the Republican solution sets are best for all Americans?
Let's take it back 8-9 years ago when I first met Scott. Went to First Colonial High School, went to a camp called Young Life in Saranac, New York, and I met Justice Rigell, just a fun guy with a lot of energy. And he ended up, joining my group of friends during that camp. And one of the first things he said to me was, "You've got to meet my dad." And I can't remember any other person that said that to me in high school, if that's the first time meeting them. And so Justice and I, we established a great relationship, ended up being very close friends, ended up going to Scott's house. I did not know about his business acumen, what he did outside of that house, but he was just so good to my friends and I. And fast forward about 3 or 4 years, I decided to start a business. I wanted to help out in my community. I was the only person from my football team, African-American kid, to go to college, only person out of my neighborhood to go to college. And I wanted to give back. I wanted to reach back over the fence and then pull some folks over. So I told Justice about my vision. And again, he said, "You need to meet my dad. You need to go see my dad about this." So we did a lot of work in the community, a lot of outreach, helping folks in underprivileged communities. And Scott always said yes. Whenever I knocked on that office door, he said yes.
Well, I love to hang out with young entrepreneurs. I really do. And I really do have a heart for young entrepreneurs in the minority community, because I am convinced that this disparity in household income, this disparity in average net worth between different communities, this is not good for America. And the solution is not redistribution in some way. The solution is to raise up young entrepreneurs. That requires an outstanding early education, a commitment there, and then helping young entrepreneurs succeed and prosper. Now, somewhere along that journey, my life took a turn that I truly wasn't expecting. It wasn't on the bucket list of life, and that was public service. And when you and I started writing together, I remember vividly not trying to convince you of something. I said, "Esmel," because I knew where you were coming from, and I just said, "Listen, you don't have to agree with everything I'm saying and doing." Now, I'd ask that you not, actually work against it, and of course you never did, but I just wanted you to evaluate the two solution sets, and to make it simple, the Democratic solution set and then the Republican solution set. And because I'm so convinced that we win on the merit, that we can handle and want a rigorous examination of the two, and that if fully understood by the full fabric of our community, including, of course, the African-American community and all, that we win. I mean, I just believe in our product. So what along the lines within the Republican creed and those kind of things, what did you find compelling about that part?
Well, I remember when Scott first asked me to help him out when he decided to run, and at that point in time, I didn't really know about what was going on in politics. It just wasn't something that was discussed a lot in my household. And so I said, "Scott, let me take some time to do some research." And over time, I found this. The same things that we did speak about, although it wasn't closely related to politics, is what is aligned in the Republican Party. I believe in self-accountability. I believe to get up every morning and work for a paycheck and to pay for my bills. I believe to spend less than I'm making and to save more. And I believe in a strong national defense. And I don't want to spoil anything.
Welcome to the Republican Party.
Hashtag spoiler alert.
There you go.
Congressman Rigell is going to be doing something coming up on John Fredericks Show starting in December, where he's going to outline the Republican creed and just
walk through it. It's a beautiful document.
Absolutely.
It really is timeless. We did not fare well, obviously, in this last statewide election. It's not because of the core values, for other reasons that we don't have time to get into right now. But let's pivot just a moment.
Okay.
Of course, you saddled up here with a businessman, and I have a bias toward that which is practical, that which can be done and will really move things. I'm not interested in rhetoric and simply complaining about the situation. We are in the business. We're in the business of persuasion,
yes,
of changing people's minds, and in order to win the hearts and the minds and the trust of an increasingly diverse electorate. So, what good counsel, based on your first-hand experiences, what you've lived out, what would you advise to hardworking Republicans who want to grow the party? Both those are maybe at more senior leadership levels, and the hard work and the practical patriot in the Commonwealth who's saying, "Look, I want to advance here, and I want us to do better within the minority community." What advice would you give?
Well, Scott, to me, it's quite simple. If you're running a business and you're struggling with one target market, what do? You focus more energy on that market, but you have to know who your audience is.
Okay.
You have to know how to talk to them. And I think that Republicans need to do a better job at messaging.
Yeah. Listen, hashtag, absolutely, and common sense there. Let's unpack that a bit. Okay, messaging has to change. Now, one thing you've not said, interestingly, is, well, Scott, policy's got to change, and you haven't said that. So you're talking about the approach, making this, I think of it as sweet to the ear of the independent voter and perhaps the Democratic-leaning voter. How do we earn their confidence and trust? What are some of those more practical aspects? Okay, you said, really focus on a particular market, like minorities and African American community. How would you go about that?
I truly think we have the best policies.
Yes,
I think we have the best ideas. I don't think we're right all the time, but the majority of the time, I think we're right. How do we reach those demographics? Yes. How do we reach out to them? Simply, what have we been doing?
Showing up.
Yeah.
Now, listen, Ken, there's a lot of truth in that.
We're in the churches.
That's true.
We're accessible. When NAACP wants to reach out to you and meet with you, they said in meetings that, Scott, you're one of the most accessible representatives, if not the most accessible representative that we've had, that we work with. Make yourself available.
One of the key principles for me, and something that I'm mindful of every day, is saying the same thing to every group of people. When my friends in the Tea Party come by, and they are my friends, I say the same thing to them that I say to my friends in the NAACP or the Filipino American community or the Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce. It's not morphing into one group or another. The topics might change a bit, sure, but the basic core message needs to be consistent. And I think you and I say you and I because we are a team. We're together so much. We do that. Is that? Give me a yeah that we do.
That's right. That's right.
No, it is true. And so we're showing up. And what about this thing about concern? Because so often our Democratic friends want to do what? They want to convey that they care
concede the moral
more.
High ground.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell us about this moral high ground and how that fits into all this.
Well, you know what? When it comes to elderly, to minorities, healthcare, the environment, Democrats own that.
Or they want to.
Well, they're doing a
well. There you go. You're right, Mr. Meeks.
To be honest.
Listen, I'm with you on that.
But it's not necessarily true, and that's why I think we need to improve on our messaging, because they don't care more about our elderly. They
Absolutely.
Don't care more.
I tell you, this evokes and pulls out of me a visceral reaction, because it is indeed because I care. It is because the Republican Party cares that we are advancing solutions that protect and preserve Medicare. Look, the facts are these. If we don't make some wise reforms on these programs, they will not be around. We are on an unsustainable fiscal path, and Republicans and all of what we're doing, we are dealing with fiscal reality more often than not. We're not perfect, as you said, but it's because we care about the environment and the elderly and the poor. Just what we were talking about earlier with Congressman Scalise. Look, 18,000 local jobs could be created, and I'm so grateful to the NAACP for standing with us on this. They took some heat on that, didn't they?
They did, yes.
Yeah, because they stood with us on this bill that would open up 18,000 local jobs. And right now, the facts are these. The only thing standing between us and those jobs is the Department of Interior, the administration, and notwithstanding any rhetoric that may be coming out of the administration, they are blocking jobs on that and so many other areas. We could talk about that. Esmail, you're a remarkable young man. I am grateful for your friendship and the insight that you've helped me have on this critical issue. We need you to continue to lead, and one day I'd love to see a lapel pin on you for as a member of Congress or indeed the President of the United States. There you go. I said it. Ken, you've got
my vote.
There you go. He's
appreciate the opportunity to
he's
serve
worthy
you,
of
Scott.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Esmail.
All righty, let's check on some news.
Hi, John Fredericks here. For me, at this stage of my life, it's all about trust. And
Good morning, everybody. State Senator Creed Deeds is blaming the Rockbridge Area Community Services Board, a local agency that administers mental health and substance abuse services, for the incident last week that resulted in his stabbing and the suicide of his son, Austin Gus Deeds. While the 2009 Democratic nominee for Virginia governor said it was too soon to talk in great detail about his son's death, he said he has very strong opinions about the CSB and the responsibility. Senator Deeds was stabbed in the face and chest by his son after an argument last Tuesday outside their rural Bath County home. Gus Deeds was later found inside, dying of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He had undergone a psychiatric evaluation the day before under an emergency custody order, but was returned home after officials said no psychiatric bed could be located. 3 nearby hospitals confirmed that they had space, but were never contacted. Both Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell and the state's Inspector General have launched investigations into what went wrong. Virginia election officials have certified Democrat Mark Herring as the winner of the November 5th election for Attorney General by a 165-vote margin, and giving Republican Mark Obenshain 10 days to request a recount. In addition, the certification came with question from State Board of Elections Chairman Charlie Judd, who voted to certify but noted, quote, reservations about the integrity of the data due to the lack of uniformity in vote tabulations between localities. Political observers suspect Judd is referring to questions about how Fairfax County gave provisional ballot voters more time than other communities to prove their vote should count. Republicans have complained that the Fairfax process appeared to help Herring. Since the election, Herring and Obenshain have both announced transition teams. The Virginia Beach school bus driver who rear-ended a disabled car last month on Holland Road near Independence Boulevard, leaving a Navy sailor dead and injuring several students, will not be charged with any crimes. Virginia Beach Commonwealth's attorney Harvey Bryant says he reviewed the evidence from the Virginia Beach Police Department's fatal crash team and concluded, with their concurrence, that there is no basis to charge the school bus driver with involuntary manslaughter or reckless driving in the death of 27-year-old Christian Montez. Police and prosecutors have not released the name of the bus driver. 2 former sailors convicted of stealing body armor from Oceana Naval Air Station and selling it to an undercover federal agent have been sentenced to 3 years probation. Antoine Lindsay and Robert Brick pleaded guilty to theft of government property. They sold the stolen body armor on multiple occasions to an undercover Naval Criminal Investigative Service agent during the summer of 2011 in response to an ad, which was posted by the agents as part of an investigation into the illegal sale of government property. Whatever you do, don't let anyone at the National Hurricane Center pick your lottery numbers. The 2013 Atlantic season, predicted back in May to be busier than normal, turned out to be more meh, with the fewest hurricanes since 1982. Forecasters had predicted 13 to 20 named Atlantic storms, 7 to 11 strengthening into hurricanes, 3 to 6 that became major hurricanes. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration officials had said there was a 70% chance that this year is going to be more active than an average hurricane season. Well, there were 13 named storms, right on target, but only 2, Ingrid and Umberto, became hurricanes, neither considered to be major. NOAA says 2013 will rank as the 6th least active year since 1950. News brought to you by Hargrave Military Academy. Attend an educational and informative open house event at Hargrave Military Academy in Chatham, Virginia, Saturday, December the 7th, 12:30 p.m. For more information, visit hargrave.edu. Hargrave Military Academy, build his future.
Hi, I'm Mike Watson, president of CATLab, Accredited Calibration Laboratories. If your job is to ensure the integrity of instrumentation in your facility, you know the importance of a reliable calibration lab. Your company is serious about quality and compliance and relies on your expertise for both. So when it comes to the accuracy of your test equipment, you can rely on us. CATLab is accredited, prompt, and local, and since 1989 has partnered with manufacturers around the globe. Built by technicians for technicians. Visit CATLab at catlab.net.
The President of the United States is desperate. So begins the plot of America's newest spy novel, The Crown and Cardinal, by Virginia attorney and author Chad Green. It combines the best of spy novels, political intrigue, American history, and the brutal sport of politics set in Virginia's historic triangle. A must-read, riveting, well-written novel, says U.S. Air Force retired Brigadier General Don Streeter. To get your copy of The Crown and Cardinal, visit our Facebook page for a local retailer near you or call 757-320-9949. That's 757-320-9949. running my mouth as usual, oddly enough. 8:35 is the time. Traffic looks like it's doing pretty good right now. No backup related to the downtown tunnel, midtown, just a slight backup around the merge area. Came off the West Norfolk Bridge. Hampton Roads Bridge, Show, Monitor, Merrimack, James River Bridge. Everybody else now back to normal. No backups or delays. A couple of Berkeley Bridge openings on the schedule this morning at 9 and 11 o'clock. Still some heavy traffic just past Indian River Road, 64 West for that 264 eastbound exit in that right lane. And we have a super load moving through Suffolk starting in about 25 minutes from 9 to noon today along Hull Street, Kilby Avenue, Route 13, Dill Road, Hunter Street, and Hosier Street. They're moving a big old electrical transformer through there. Downtown tunnel westbound will be closed tonight overnight, 8 p.m. to 5 a.m., but then suspending that overnight closure for the holiday weekend. Becoming windy, steady rain by the afternoon. We're talking about 1 to 2 inch accumulation possible on a high of 62 degrees. Cloudy and windy, rain tonight, a low of 59. Cloudy, windy, rain, possible thunderstorms, no less, tomorrow, ending by late afternoon. The highs starting off around 63 midday, but dropping down to 45 in the afternoon. Sunny skies for Thanksgiving, a high of 40, and sunny for Friday, 46. Call Chris Weaver's real estate team for buying, selling, or leasing at 340-5555, 340-45s in a row. You can find them online at chrisweaver.com with a K, KRISweaver.com, or text your home address to Chris Weaver to get your real value at 986-0886. That's 986-0886. For Chris Weaver's real estate team.
You're listening to the John Fredericks Show.
Are you ready to finish out 2013 on a strong note? Your computer systems have the energy to finish the rest of the year out with a bang. At Providence Computers, we want to help you energize your home and business computer systems and send your students off to school with confidence. We provide excellent choices and options for upgrades to make your computers perform powerfully. Faster hard drives, more RAM, a backup drive, new virus software, or a refurbished laptop. Visit our store at 1421 Council Road in Chesapeake at Volvo. Finish 2013 strong by calling 382-7768 or visit us on the web, providencecomputers.com.
That, my friend, is a work of art. You ought to expand your business.
Where would I start?
Bayport Credit Union.
The credit union that's been here since my grandpa was a kid?
Same one. Bayport has a complete line of services for small businesses. You get quick loan decisions, and they can offer you flexible terms like they did for me.
Well, then, Bayport's the place to start.
When you're ready to do business, we're ready. Bayport Credit Union. Call 757-928-8850 or click bayportcu.org for products tailored for small businesses. Federally insured by NCUA.
We believe it now opens the door to our going into the larger, more comprehensive arrangement by which Iran will have to prove that its program is really peaceful. Even with the small amount of money being released to them, Iran is going to lose $15 to $20 billion over the next months. This is an enormous price for Iran to continue to pay if they don't live up to their word and prove to us that the program is peaceful.
I would caution the president from overselling this deal because it is not a full dismantling of their program. Remember who we're dealing with. We're dealing with Iran. They are one of the top supporters of terrorism around the world. This is providing them resources and money, and we should not take this lightly. We have to have a full dismantling if we want the world to be safer.
Nothing in this deal requires the destruction of any centrifuges. They're going to continue to be able to replace centrifuges that become inoperable. And I just don't see this movement in the direction of preventing Iran from developing a nuclear weapon at all. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be easing sanctions. Right now, the sanctions are working. They're doing exactly what they're designed to do.
If it's not a full dismantling, I don't think you'll get a bipartisan support inside the House or the Senate for saying that this is a historic deal.
Now is just not the time to ease sanctions when they are working. When you look at what we've really gotten out of this, it's moving us away from the direction of prevention of them developing a weapon.
Good morning. It's 8:39 a.m. I'm Scott Rigell. I'm your guest host this morning for the John Fredericks Show. We've been drawing from the deep well of wisdom found in the words of our founding fathers and our founding documents, and actually one that was written by our very first president, George Washington, when he was exiting office. And he gave us his very best counsel in his farewell address. And I've enjoyed and have been deeply inspired by rereading it recently, and I wanted to share just a quick portion of it this morning with you because it sets up well our next guest and the topics that we'll be covering. President Washington put it this way, and I think this relates to the abuse of executive powers. He said this, he said, "The habits of thinking in a free country should inspire caution in those entrusted with its administration. to confine themselves within their respective constitutional spheres, avoiding in the exercise of the powers of one department to encroach upon another. The spirit of encroachment, which is a little comment here, is exactly what's taking place with this administration, tends to consolidate the power of all departments in one, and thus to create, whatever the form of government, a real despotism. Well, I think that's a good way to introduce a good friend of mine, one who I deeply respect, Representative Frank Wolf. He has the privilege of representing Virginia's 10th Congressional District. He serves on the influential Appropriations Committee. And Frank, with all of that, welcome to the John Fredericks Show.
Thank you, Scott. It's good to be with you.
I appreciate you getting on the phone this weekend or this week. Frank, I have been admiring and just truly, as a fellow American, grateful for your leadership in a number of areas. First, the protection of religious minorities around the world, and specifically in, well, maybe even perhaps somewhat related, but certainly an issue that is before us and should be before the American people and is being suppressed by the administration, the terrible tragedy, the loss of life in Benghazi. You have been truly the tip of the spear in the House of Representatives, calling for in House Res 36 to establish a House Select Committee on Benghazi. Could you walk us through the substance of that and why you felt it was important that we have the Select Committee risen up?
Sure, Scott. Before I do, let me just say, on the Iranian issue on the nuclear agreement that they signed, the administration failed to advocate for 3 Americans that are being held by the Iranians. And one is Pastor Abedini, who is an Iranian-American who is over there trying to start a church. He's been moved to the most aggressive, vicious prison known, and the administration never advocated for him. You would have thought if they were going to sign a deal, whether it's a good deal or a bad deal, they would have said, and we also want these people. Washington Post says that there's an FBI agent that's been over there for 5 years. His family can't even deal with them. You would have thought they would have said, condition, we want these people released. But on the issue of Benghazi, I've been in touch with people who were on the ground at the time, and then I've been in touch with people who are involved with people who are on the ground. I believe if we do not have a select committee, a unified effort, similar to Iran-Contra, similar to Watergate, we will never find out what went on. It's HRES 36. We have 178 co-sponsors, more than 3/4 of the Republican conference. The bill has been endorsed by the American Legion, by the Federal Law Enforcement Association, by former Attorney General McCasey, the editorial page of the Wall Street Journal, and all of the families who are involved. Ty Woods' dad, Ty Woods' wife. And there have been a number of questions that I have asked, and also Devin Nunes, who's on the Intel Committee, has asked, that quite frankly have not been answered. Some of the people that were on the ground at the time have had to sign what they call NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. And I believe that you need public hearings, because right now everything is in private. The Intel Committee, everything, all their hearings have been private. You need a public hearing whereby you bring in Secretary Panetta, you have to bring in Secretary Clinton, you have to bring in John Brennan, and then they have to be there together so the members have an opportunity to ask questions. Also, the process that's been set up is flawed because, Scott, members only have 5 minutes to ask a question. Well, the witness knows when you watch Hillary Clinton, she knew that the questioner only had 5 minutes. So she could filibuster basically for 5 minutes. So you really need to be able to drill down, maybe take 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And so I believe that the current system is flawed, and we will never find out. There are so many questions. For instance, the American people don't know. The plane that picked up the wounded, and we had 4 killed, 2 severely wounded. 1 wound is still out at Walter Reed. It was a Libyan plane that picked them up, not an American plane. And the CIA employees that stayed on the tarmac after the attack, it was also a Libyan plane that picked them up. But there are so many questions that have never been answered. and the process is currently flawed.
Well, again, thank you for your leadership. The counsel that I was given when I first entered public service was, Scott, listen, there's so many things coming at our country. You really need to get dialed in on one or two things, become a subject matter expert on that, and really advance those causes. Of course, we vote on all matters and we weigh in on all matters, but to go ahead and focus. I wake up every day thinking about job creation, about getting our budget right, protecting our men and women in uniform, defending them, and you on appropriations, of course, are deeply concerned as well with getting our budget right. But you are a known and respected leader on the Hill and farther out than that on this issue. And I've heard you on multiple occasions stand up boldly in conference and speak directly to leadership unequivocally. And I really do appreciate it. There is no accountability whatsoever in this administration, and that is a factual assessment of where we are. Let me ask you, what about the probability of success here? Of course, I'm a co-sponsor on HRES 36. I'm one of the 178, and proud to be standing with you on this. What is the likelihood, and we deal with the reality here on the John Fredericks Show and, of course, in our congressional office, what's the reality of getting this thing through?
I think it's very, very high. Dorothy Woods, who's the wife of Ty Woods, is now working on an op-ed piece that she's going to write. A lot of other things are taking place. I think a lot of people said, okay, let's let, quote, regular order work. But now that it's failed, it's been 14 months from the attack. Also, there's so many other things that people don't know. For instance, there was a guy named Ali Harsi who was arrested in Turkey. He was involved in the attack on the consulate and on the annex. The Turks sent him to Tunisia. We give Tunisia $320 million a year. They're our great friend, if you will. The Tunisians would not allow the FBI to interview him. The FBI comes before my committee. Mm-hmm. 5 FBI agents went out. They stayed on the ground for weeks. Finally, they left. Senator Graham and others complained about it. The Tunisians said, okay, we'll let you talk to Harsi. They flew back in. Scott, they had 3 hours with him. The Tunisians then released him, and on YouTube it was Ali Harsi meeting with the Al-Qaeda type celebrating he's been released. The American people have to know about that. Why have we not gone after anyone? Anwar al-Awlaki, who was an American citizen, was killed with a drone, and yet nobody who's been involved in the attack. There was a guy arrested in Egypt that the Egyptians have. The FBI has not been able to interview him. So I think we're reaching a bubbling point. And last week, Devin Nunes, who sat in all of the hearings, has now raised questions that the fact that he has raised them, he's asking for certain things to be done in addition to what's going on. So I think the likelihood is bubbling up that we're going to get a select committee.
Well, I stand with you in this, and I'm going to continue to do everything I can from my office and the influence that we have as 1/435th of 1/2 of 1/3 of the federal government to advance this. There's this complete disconnect between what then candidate Barack Obama is doing now as President Obama, the promise of transparency, the promise of accountability. I truly know of no one who has been truly held accountable for the IRS scandal, for Benghazi and these other areas of just gross negligence in the managerial side. And I really take no pleasure of even appearing to pile on here, but we've got to call things as they are. And this is just a serious breach of trust with the American people. I had one woman say to me as I was advancing this bill and helping you with this, and they said, Scott, we know everything we need to know about Benghazi. And I said, well, you must know more than I know. And I just walked through the questions that I had. And, of course, you and I have both been in classified briefings. I can't disclose what I heard in there. I can say, though, that we turned over security to folks who I truly, in my view, really understood to be not completely, within the control of the Libyan government. And it's just so incredulous that we would do this and that there's no one held accountable there. So I appreciate that.
Well, you're right. You ought to tell that lady, too. The special operations groups and of course you have a lot of SEALs down in your area. They all favor a select committee. General Boykin, who was commander of the forces in Somalia, Mogadishu, his special operations group, they all support it. All of the veterans, they all think this is very, very important. So I think we can find the answer. It's not political. We want to hold the people accountable. Nobody's been held accountable. Susan Rice went on television and said 5 different times that it was a video, and now she's a national security advisor. So nobody's been held accountable, and I think we have to find out to make sure that it never happens again.
Yeah, and I don't. And here's, I think, what the administration generally sees this as a weakness to show any weakness at all, and so they just keep telling the American people that things are okay. Things are not okay. I think it's wisdom. It takes courage for the administration to confront these type of things so that we can learn from them. It is not a witch hunt. It's not to harm a particular family or a particular federal employee that served with distinction in their country, but perhaps made an egregious and poor decision along the way. But for those who are elevated into leadership positions, there comes along with that, or should, this deep sense of accountability. And, it's so present, for example, in our military. If we have a commander all the way up to a 4-star admiral, even the CNO, look, if those leaders really go sideways, they know that they will be held accountable. And that's a good thing. And that's not taking place right now. You're listening to the John Fredericks Show. Our guest this morning is Congressman Frank Wolf. We've been talking about Benghazi. When we come back from a short break, we're going to talk about continuing resolutions. He serves on the Influential Appropriations Committee, what they are and how they harm our military, and what we need to do about them. Thank you for tuning in. It's 8:52 a.m. Ken?
Call Rose Brothers Heating and Air. We're old enough to trust and small enough to care. Rose Brothers Heating and Air at 898-3051. And we'll be right there.
If your air won't blow, let us know. Call Rose Brothers at 898-3051. And we'll be right there and we'll get the job done. The number again, 898-3051. That's 898-3051.
Rose Brothers Heating and Air at 898-3051. And we'll be right there.
Dealing with your pharmacy should be effortless. That's why you need to make Heidenwood Pharmacy your family pharmacy. Locally owned and operated since 1959 in Newport News, you'll get quality, friendly, and efficient service. And if you need it delivered locally, there's only one call to make. Heidenwood Pharmacy, 595-1151. Most insurances are accepted, including Express Scripts, Anthem, Medicare D programs, and TRICARE beneficiaries. Heidenwood Pharmacy is just a phone call away. 595-1151.
Good morning. It's 8:53 a.m. It's a crisp November morning. I'm Scott Rigell. I'm your guest host this morning for the John Fredericks Show. I'm just delighted to have a wonderful member of Congress and trusted friend, just a real strong American, Congressman Frank Wolf. He serves in Virginia's 10th Congressional District. He serves on the House Appropriations Committee, which is very influential. Frank, if you would this morning, because of our district here, the one that I have the privilege to represent, home to more men and women in uniform of all the congressional districts, we are living out the pain of continuing resolutions. And rather than me kind of pontificate on that, I certainly could. I'm going to resist that temptation. I do want to hear from you and our listeners to hear from you as to what is a continuing resolution, why are they so prevalent, how do they hurt our military, and what can be done about it?
Well, continuing resolution is really a sign of failure on the part of both the Congress and the administration. A continuing resolution just uses last year's figures, fixes it, and doesn't give the Congress any impact. For instance, last year when they were trying to do a CR, we were able to pass my bill. We work with the administration. Here's what we've done. We put together a new 9/11 commission made up of Republicans and Democrats to go to see what was recommended during the 9/11, what was done, what was not done. We've also done a lot of work on the prison reform. We also funded the National Science Foundation, the different programs for STEM, for math, science, physics, chemistry, biology. We also funded certain programs with regard to cyber to make sure the FBI, the Chinese are spying on just about every major company. The Chinese stripped my computers, took everything off of my computers. Well, by having a continuing resolution, all those things go. and you are at such a low level. And as you know, and I got to say this, I appreciate, Scott, the fact that you've been courageous enough to stand up and speak out on this issue. This is very, very important. You've been very forceful on the issue of balanced budgets and things like that. If we just stay at this level and don't have any opportunities for the Congress to have an input, we pretty much turn everything over. And of course, under sequestration and a CR, the agency that gets hit more than any other is the Department of Defense. They get devastated.
Well,
and so that's why I think, and I'm hopeful that Paul Ryan and Patty Murray can come up with something, certainly by the middle of December. But a CR is really a sign of failure.
Yes, and it is having very practical, adverse impact on our military. So it transcends political affiliation. It is a truly American issue to equip our men and women in uniform with the very best advantage so that they can, if we ask them to fight, they can fight to victory, come home safe. There is this delta between the Senate top line number. They certainly, of course, not surprisingly, want to spend far more on discretionary spending than is currently called for in under current law. The 1058 top line number of $1.058 trillion in the Senate. The number is less than that in the House. Do you see us breaking this impasse? I know you said you're hopeful. We've got to get this done, right? Because we've got a January 15th deadline.
Yeah, I think we will. I know Paul Ryan wants to demonstrate and show that we can govern, that there is success. And Senator Murray, the Democratic senator from Washington State, I think she wants to do the same thing. They're both good people, and I think they're really working hard. It's pretty much between Murray and Ryan. They're going to make or break it. And everything I hear indicates that they are. But you reach a certain point, if there's not a number by December 13th, then the appropriators can't use that time to put everything together. We're hoping that we had a number by the 3rd. But the 13th is sort of the drop-dead date. If you don't have it by the 13th, you're going to have to do another CR. Do you do a long-term CR, which would be a disaster, or do you do one for 2 weeks, or do you do one for 30 days? But I think they're going to work it out. I mean, obviously, I can't guarantee it, but I think they're going to work it out.
I sure hope so, too, because the ramifications of not are so serious. I can tell you this, and I think you know where I stand on this, and I know you've been an advocate for making sure that we pass all of our appropriations bills. I am intent on, in a constructive way, applying a constructive amount of pressure to leadership to guide us toward passing all of our appropriations bills, all 13, prior to breaking for any recess this coming summer. I just think our calendar needs to reflect and perfectly reflect the challenges facing our country. Frank, thank you so much for coming on the John Fredericks Show this morning. It's been a real pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for your service, and have you and all your listeners have a very nice Thanksgiving.
The same.
God bless you all.
Thank you. It's 8:58 right now, and you're listening to the John Fredericks Show. I'm Scott Rigell. I'm your guest host, and we're at the top of the hour. That means, Ken, you're back on you got the lead, sir.
Thank you, sir. All righty, take a look at traffic. Not a lot going on out there.
For the first time in a decade, we've halted the progress on Iran's nuclear program. Key parts of the program will be rolled back. International inspectors will have unprecedented access to Iran's nuclear-related facilities. So this will help Iran from building a nuclear weapon. And over the coming months, we're going to continue our diplomacy with the goal of achieving a comprehensive solution that deals with the threat of Iran's nuclear program once and for all.
Look in his eye. Fed on nothing but full of pride.
None of that's going to be easy. Huge challenges remain, but we cannot close the door on diplomacy, and we cannot rule out peaceful solutions to the world's problems. We cannot commit ourselves to an endless cycle of conflict. Tough talk and bluster may be the easy thing to do politically, but it's not the right thing for our security.
Every single one of us, the devil inside, devil inside, devil inside. Every single one of us, the devil inside.
It's long past time to fix our broken immigration system. The only thing standing in our way right now is the unwillingness of certain Republicans in Congress to catch up with the rest of the country.
Here come the world, the look in the tide. future uncertain, but certainly slight.
Good morning. It's 9:11 a.m. I'm Scott Rigell. I'm your guest host this morning on the John Fredericks Show. We've been drawing from the deep well of wisdom of our founding documents and really those words written by our founding fathers. And as a way to introduce our next guest, who I'm delighted to have on the show, I want to read to you these words by Thomas Jefferson. Honor, justice, and humanity forbid us to tamely surrender that freedom which we received from our gallant ancestors and which our innocent posterity have a right to receive from us. You know, we are a free people because good men and women of all races and all political persuasions, and frankly, no political persuasion, have gone forth and put themselves forward and said, we will defend liberty. Some are called to give the ultimate sacrifice. Some never, experience war and combat, but we're grateful for all. And I'm especially grateful for our next guest. He is the representative from the 1st Congressional District of Florida. He serves on the House Armed Services Committee with me, respected member. He also serves on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. And importantly, this morning, because we're going to focus on those who have defended our country, our veterans, no one is more qualified to speak to this. He is the chairman of the House Committee on Veteran Affairs. I'm speaking of my friend and a tremendous leader in the House of Representatives, Jeff Miller. Chairman Miller, welcome. Welcome to the John Fredericks Show.
Good morning, Scott. It's great to be with you from a rainy panhandle of Florida this morning.
Well, it's actually pretty nice here and crisp, but look, as a former Floridian, I appreciate your leadership. I really do. Tell us a bit about your district and why the military is important to you as well.
Well, and talking about the folks up in your part of the world in Hampton Roads and Naval Air Station Norfolk, all of those that fly in airplanes and helicopters probably spent some time in my district at one point or another. We're home to Naval Air Station Pensacola, Naval Air Station Whitingfield, where all of our naval helicopter pilots get their training, and quite a few of the fixed-wing pilots do as well. I also have Eglin Air Force Base, the largest Air Force base in the world, and home to the 7th Special Forces Group, the Green Berets. So we are blessed to every day witness the young men and women that wear the uniform of this nation.
I really share that. I'm the son of an Iwo Jima veteran. My dad's still doing great at 90 years old. In fact, he may be listening to this via the web. But we really are grateful to our men and women in uniform. They've been through so much, and their families. Our Blue Star families have been through so much. Jeff, one of the reasons I asked you to come on the show this morning, in fact, I'm delighted that you accepted, and I shamelessly, you remember on the House floor, I threw out...
On the floor of the House.
Yes, and I said, now, Jeff, listen, if it takes us going turkey hunting in the spring, I'll do that because I know you love hunting. And you're an accomplished hunter, and look, I'd still like to do that. But the reason that I asked you to come on this morning is to provide some insight as to what is taking place at the VA, and just your perspective on this, because the town hall, I held one on Saturday. Any person could come, any person could ask a question. I really enjoyed it, a conversation with the district, but several lined up and said, Scott, listen, this is not good. And the backlog, and I've dealt and invested in this topic, but I think our listeners really want to hear from you. And as the chairman, what perspective can you offer to us?
I think the first thing that you have to do when you talk about the Department of Veterans Affairs and realize that they are the second largest agency in the federal government with about 330,000 employees, a budget of almost $150 billion a year. Most of those employees are doing outstanding work, and I think anybody that has been involved with the VA system over the years, especially those Vietnam veterans that came back and were not given the respect that they were due when they arrived back in the United States, knew that the VA was not a place that they would go to for their health care. But today, the story is much better for the health care that they receive. But You said a word, and that word was disability backlog and the claims that are out there. And that's got to be one of the biggest things that VA is grappling with right now, is getting a handle on the challenge that it has been facing them for years. It has been growing for a considerable amount of time. VA has now started chipping away at the backlog of disability claims. Those that are called backlogged are over 125 days, and that number right now, according to VA, stands at 400,000 cases. I would say that is VA's number of 400,000 cases, but if you talk to the veterans, they're going to tell you that many of those cases that VA claims that they have adjudicated are still backlogged as it relates to the veteran, because they've had to go to the Veterans Court of Appeals. There are provisional claims that are going to have to be re-adjudicated. So VA is trying to solve the problem, but they're not making the progress that they really need to make.
Yes, there were a couple of illnesses that were added and as a something that a veteran could apply for and receive. What were those driving factors of the sharp spike that the VA experienced a few years ago?
Well, what's interesting, Scott, is that VA will continue to say that by giving presumption for Agent Orange illness, 3 different diseases that they are now saying that they are attributable to exposure to Agent Orange, VA will say that that is the reason that the backlog spiked. Then they will also claim that, well, there are more disability claims coming in and they're more complex. I actually found testimony from a 1995 budget hearing where the VA said the exact same thing. There were more claims and there were more complex claims that were coming in. And so, they're running out of excuses as to why the number has spiked. Granted, it was the right thing for the Secretary to do, to grant those presumptive positions for veterans that were exposed to Agent Orange. However, they need to quit using that as an excuse. I think the main problem that exists out there is how they manage their resources.
Yes.
And until they start figuring out that they need to get rid of the people that aren't doing the job appropriately, and bear in mind, as I said before, the vast majority of folks are doing the right thing, but it doesn't take many to absolutely spoil the whole reputation of the department.
Well, I don't presume that you've been listening to the show all the way from Florida this morning, but we've had a theme this morning that's developed of a lack of accountability from the administration. I had our colleague Steve Scalise on from Louisiana. I had fellow Virginian Frank Wolf on. Steve and I were talking about the lack of accountability within the administration for really holding back the tremendous job-creating potential we have with coastal Virginia energy here. We could help so many of these 13,000 service members who transition out of the service right here in Hampton Roads into good-paying jobs, helping us develop offshore energy. We can't move forward simply because of the administration. Frank and I talked about and walked through the important work with respect to Benghazi. And here you are as a chairman of the Veterans Committee, just making clear about the lack of accountability within the VA for really sharply reducing the level of claims there. Where do these demographic trends take us over the next 10, 20, 30, even 40 years? What will we see in terms of the workload at the VA looking forward?
The VA workload is going to continue to increase. Without question, mental health and post-traumatic stress are 2 very important issues that the VA has to be focused on, and I've been saying it as loudly as I could over the last couple of years. They are not prepared for the surge of returning warfighters from Afghanistan entering into the system. And unfortunately, we are seeing suicides at a rate of about 22 a day of veterans of all conflicts now from World War II to date. And that number's been pretty much static over the last decade, and instead of seeing that number go down, it has either stayed flat or it has increased. And we have to find a way for our veterans to be treated how they want to be treated and where they want to be treated. The old model of VA forcing veterans to go where they want them to go, and in particular to facilities that belong to VA, is an outmoded model. They need to be able to go out into the system and be able to get health care as close to home as they possibly could. Now, unfortunately, we will get a lot of pushback from the veteran service organizations because they say that that's the first step at dismantling the VA system, and that is not at all what we are trying to do, is to crush a system that's providing services for veterans. But bear in mind, we are supposed to be treating the veterans first, not taking care of the VA system.
Yes, sir.
And unfortunately, that's what has happened over a number of years. You know, there's been a 40% budget increase, the Department of Veterans Affairs, over the last number of years, and they have gotten every dollar. They've gotten every person they've asked for and every piece of equipment they've asked for. And so, you know, they can't turn to Congress and say, you haven't given us what we've asked for, because you, as a member of Congress, have continued to do that, and other members in the Virginia delegation. We have all worked together in a bipartisan fashion to make sure that veterans are not used as political pawns in the process that takes place on Capitol Hill.
Well, that is a bright light of bipartisanship on this matter. You know, I've said this before, that when I'm on the way home from Washington, more often than I would like, I end up at Arlington because of the nature of the commands that are in our district, and in yours as well. And, you know, I'm going to a service with a family, and there are no Democratic tombstones in Arlington. There are no Republican tombstones in Arlington. And some of these young men and women truly had never even gotten to the point of really sorting out, you know, where they were politically. It is not a partisan matter. I appreciate your leadership on these matters, and I share your view that we need to allow our veterans to get care closer to home. I've heard so many have asked me for this, and I know you're leading on that, and I appreciate it. We'll be back in just a minute with Congressman Jeff Miller, the chairman of the Veteran Affairs Committee in the House of Representatives. I'm Scott Rigell. I'm your guest host this morning for the John Fredericks Show at 7:23 a.m.
Quality, friendly, and efficient service. That's what you'll get at Hydenwood Pharmacy, locally owned and operated in Newport News since 1959. Hydenwood Pharmacy accepts most insurances, including Express Scripts, Anthem, Medicare D programs, and TRICARE beneficiaries. Hydenwood Pharmacy offers local delivery. Give them a call, 595-1151. Make Hydenwood Pharmacy your family pharmacy, 595-1151. Call Hydenwood Pharmacy today, 595-1151.
Call Rose Brothers Heating and Air. We're old enough to trust and small enough to care. Rose Brothers Heating and Air at 898-3051. And we'll be right there.
If your air won't blow, let us know. Call Rose Brothers at 898-3051. And we'll be right there, and we'll get the job done. The number again, 898-3051. That's 898-3051.
Rose Brothers Heating and Air at 898-3051. And we'll be right there.
Good morning. It's 9:25 a.m. I'm Scott Rigell. I'm your guest host this morning for the John Fredericks Show. Delighted to have our special guest this morning, Chairman Jeff Miller. The reason I call him chairman is because he is the chairman of the House Committee on Veteran Affairs. He also serves on the House Armed Services Committee with me and our other friends here, Rob Whitman, and our good friend Randy Forbes, fine leaders in our community. He's also on the Permanent Select Committee for Intelligence. Now, when we were on that short break there, we received a question via email, and Esmel, at some point you'll get this here to me, and I'll ask the chairman on that. But while we're waiting for this question, let me ask you this, Jeff. I am so focused on helping our conference and the House, and of course the Senate as well, you know, break through this gridlock that we've got here with respect to continuing resolutions. As a House Armed Services member, could you just walk us through your perspective on this and the impact that these continued reliance upon them has on our military?
We have to have an aura of sustainability and the ability to project out for our military, not just a couple of months, but years in advance. And these stop-start continuing resolutions that we're doing right now does not help them at all, because it doesn't give them the ability to project as far as they need, especially when you deal with the contractors that are out there trying to do their job as well. And unfortunately, it is hollowing out the issue that a lot of folks talk about right now is sequester. And that's something that Paul Ryan, chairman of our budget committee, is trying to deal with on the Hill. But, it's not the way that we're supposed to be doing business. We should be passing appropriation bills in a timely fashion. That's the way it's been done for years. And unfortunately, the Senate has basically locked down and not passed any appropriation bills. And unfortunately, our Milcon VA bill, the defense appropriation bills, have not been passed. And in years past, we've been able to get them off the table.
Yes.
And not get caught up in this CR merry-go-round that's been going on. So it's detrimental to the folks at home and to the warfighter when you have these fits of stops and starts with continuing resolution.
This is such a deep concern for you and for me, and we've got to break through this and get back on regular order. It's really something that I've not really experienced in the 3 years that I've served. Our friend Frank Wolf spoke to this as well. Let me ask you, how can a member of Congress, for a veteran who's out there today hearing this and may have a claim or some problem like that, what can a congressional office do for a veteran who's having difficulty getting something through the VA?
Well, veterans are a hardy bunch, and they usually try to go through the process on their own, and it's very, very difficult. Even I, as chairman of the committee, find the paperwork that they have to deal with and some of the backup material that they have to provide for a disability claim burdensome. However, when they finally reach the end of their rope, they will turn to a member of Congress, and that's usually when they're pretty angry because they've been waiting sometimes 1 and 2 years for an answer out of VA. What a lot of veterans don't know is each of us have a member of our staff in our district offices that's pretty much tasked with handling VA claims. And while we don't rate the claims, the Department of Veterans Affairs that actually does that, we do have the ability to inquire on a veteran's behalf, and sometimes it makes a difference.
Yes.
They have now started a process of putting veterans in different lanes to move the process faster. I don't think that's going to work because I still think they have a management issue. The mid-level management at the Department of Veterans Affairs has grown more than any other part of the department. They really need to grow the downstream line, the folks that are on the front line, not the middle management and the upper management. But unfortunately, as things go, that's the way it's been happening. But contact a member of Congress's office earlier in the process. Now, of course, all the veteran service organizations have veteran service officers that help you fill out your claim, and that's an important help. But don't feel like a member of Congress is not willing to take up your cause and get some answers for you.
That's right, and indeed we are. If you're listening today, you're a veteran, you need help, please reach out to us at rigel.house.gov, rigel.house.gov. It's rigell.house.gov. Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show today, and we look forward to having you in the district. And on a lighter note, I look forward to taking you up to the Eastern Shore. There are plenty of turkeys up there. Maybe we can get out there at really early and watch the sun come up and maybe bring one home. Thank you so much for your leadership.
Nothing else, seeing the sunrise is the best thing.
There you go. You're absolutely right. Thanks again. I'm Scott Rigell, guest hosting today's John Fredericks Show. It's 9:30 a.m. Ken, you've got it.
And doing an outstanding job, may I say that.
I appreciate that.
Still some heavy traffic, 264 east and west of the downtown tunnel following that earlier Berkeley Bridge opening, but it's moving and it's starting to thin out, and we still have some heavy traffic Military Highway following that Gilmerton Bridge opening. CBS is next. It's 9:31.
This news update, I'm Dave Barrett. Early wintertime in North Carolina.
Yeah, we're getting ready.
That's a highway worker who was spraying brine on the roads. Freezing rain could pelt down there today. CBS's Jim Crisula with the big picture.
A huge winter storm that is sure to impact Thanksgiving week travel has prompted warnings and advisories from the mountains of North Georgia all the way to northern New York and Vermont. Flooding rains and snow and ice will slow ground and air travel. Severe storms are possible along the northern Gulf Coast and coastal areas of North and South Carolina.
From Charlotte to D.C., Philadelphia to Boston, air travel could be affected by this storm system. Mikey Smith was stuck in Milwaukee. The Lone Star State is his eventual destination.
My flight got delayed. Now we've got bumped from 2 other flights. So we're trying to connect through Kansas City and get back to Texas. So, I wish I could click my heels 3 times and be home, but this is pretty tough.
CBS News Update. I'm Dave Barrett.
It's football season again, and Long Jewelers knows you want to have your butt parked in the recliner all weekend, every weekend.
Honey, we need to shop for the kids, and don't forget Sunday dinner.
Panic
with my mom.
sets in.
Did you take my car in for the engine check light?
You're hours away from kickoff, and you have no game plan. Go long. That is, go to Long Jewelers. Call it a bribe. Call it placating. But the fact is, Long Jewelers knows that women are big football fans too and enjoy the games just as much as the guys.
Offsides, you're crazy. Come on, ref.
There may be one thing they enjoy more, a gift from Long Jewelers. Long Jewelers on the Boulevard is your friend for the football season and any season, giving you the home field advantage you need. Surprise your cheering section with a selection from Longs, and then celebrate at halftime. Fan or not, enjoy your upcoming football marathons by keeping her on your team with the best game plan of the season. A trip to Long Jewelers on the Boulevard at 2965 Virginia Beach Boulevard at North Lynn Haven.
9:33 is the time. Again, those 2 backups we have are because of those bridge openings that occurred at 9 o'clock at the Government Bridge on Military Highway, the Berkeley Bridge at the downtown tunnel. Again, a little bit of a backup east and westbound, but that's starting to thin out. The Berkeley Bridge has another opening scheduled for 11 o'clock this morning. No other backups or delays anywhere. Just traffic notes. Downtown tunnel westbound will be closed overnight tonight, 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. Then they'll suspend that overnight closure for the holiday weekend. And a superload is moving through Suffolk along Hull Street, Kilby Avenue, Route 13, Dill Road, Hunter Street, and Hosier Road. They'll be doing that between now and noon today. Becoming windy, steady rain developing by the afternoon. We're talking a lot of it, somewhere around 2 inches possible, a high of 62. Cloudy, windy, more rain tonight, a low of 59. Cloudy, windy, more rain, possible thunderstorms tomorrow, ending by late afternoon, a high of 63, starting off in the early afternoon, but then by late afternoon, temperatures will start falling down to about 45 degrees, and be thankful it's not snow. Sunny skies for Thanksgiving Day, a high of 40. Sunny skies for Friday, 46 degrees. The Chris Weaver Real Estate Team, they're the experts in buying, selling, and leasing properties, and they're also experts in the value of a home. So if you'd like to find out what your home is really worth, text your home address to Chris Weaver at 986-0886, and in 30 minutes less, find out what your home is really worth. Find Chris Weaver online at chrisweaver.com with a K, K-R-I-S Weaver.com, or you can call the Chris Weaver Real Estate Team at 340-5555, 340-45s in a row.
You're listening to The John Fredericks Show.
That, my friend, is a work of art. You ought to expand your business.
Where would I start?
Bayport Credit Union.
The credit union that's been here since my grandpa was a kid?
Same one. Bayport has a complete line of services for small businesses. You get quick loan decisions, and they can offer you flexible terms like they did for me.
Well, then, Bayport's the place to start.
When you're ready to do business, we're ready. Bayport Credit Union. Call 757-928-8850 or click bayportcu.org for products tailored for small businesses. Federally insured by NCUA.
Quality, friendly, and efficient service. That's what you'll get at Hydenwood Pharmacy, locally owned and operated in Newport News since 1959. Hydenwood Pharmacy accepts most insurances, including Express Scripts, Anthem, Medicare D programs, and TRICARE beneficiaries. Hydenwood Pharmacy offers local delivery. Give them a call, 595-1151. Make Hydenwood Pharmacy your family pharmacy, 595-1151. Call Hydenwood Pharmacy today, 595-1151.
We just feel more pressure needs to be brought on Iran rather than to make this deal and take the pressure off of Iran. We needed to continue to ratchet up those sanctions until Iran was willing to agree to give up its right to enrich, and to give up its nuclear program. Until they do that, they're still on the road to having the capability for undetectable nuclear weapons breakout. Once before, we had an agreement with Iran. They walked away from it, and The IAEA had an agreement with Iran, and Iran went ahead and built an enriched facility building and lied to the IAEA about that.
I've crafted legislation to hold the administration and the international community's feet to the fire over the next 6 months to ensure that this interim deal is not the norm. We see the reaction in Iran right now. I mean, they're spiking the football in the end zone, saying that, look, we've consolidated our gains, we've relieved sanctions, we're going to have the right to enrich. We've seen what's happened in North Korea. They now have nuclear weapons, and I don't want to see that happen in Iran.
It's disappointing to me that Iran is still going to be allowed to enrich while they're talking. I do think sanctions should always be hanging there because that's what brought Iran to the table in the first place, and I don't think you make them bargain in good faith by going squishy.
They do view this administration as weak, and I think from their standpoint, they see this as their window of opportunity to negotiate with an administration that has shown that it really doesn't have a lot of the intestinal fortitude that other administrations have had.
What have we done? We've taken away the one thing. We've given them just enough breathing room, the one thing that brought them to the table. Very strong bipartisan opposition to the deal. Our Arab League partners don't like the deal. Israel doesn't like the deal. And we may have just encouraged more violence in the future than we have stopped.
Good morning. I'm Scott Rigell. It's 9:37 a.m. and you're listening to the John Fredericks Show. And what a pleasure it's been to host the show as the guest host this morning. Had a lot of interesting people come on the show, and I think that's one of the joys of public service. There's some very difficult parts of it, but one of the joys is just the interesting people you meet along the way. And I've had so many friends come on. We've talked about some critical matters, and we're going to finish really strong here with our next guest. And before I introduce her, I just want to read a little bit. We've been drawing from the deep well of the wisdom of our founding fathers, and this is something I think of my friend Vivian. I think of these words come to mind from Thomas Jefferson. He put it this way: democracy demands an educated and informed electorate. Whenever the people are well informed, they can be trusted with their own government. That whenever things get so far wrong as to attract their notice, they may be relied on to set them to rights. And I think of our next guest as helping advance this idea of an informed electorate, and I indeed call her a patriot. And that is not patronizing to her, but because it's a term that means a lot to me. And she is a Democrat. She's my Democratic friend among many others, but the reason I mention this about her is that she cares about the future of the Commonwealth. She cares about the future of the country. She argues her points very clearly and with civility. And if I keep talking, we won't hear from our guest. So I want to welcome our guest, Vivian Page. She often contributes to the editorial page of the Virginian Pilot, and she is an accomplished entrepreneur, CPA. Vivian, welcome.
Good morning, Scott. How are you?
I'm doing well, and I hope you are this morning.
I'm awake.
Listen, I got up at 4 o'clock.
Well, you poor thing.
Oh my gosh! Listen, it was, but it's been a real privilege to host the show. Ken has kept me from making any real mistakes, and anyway, we've had a lot of fun this morning. Talked about a lot of different things, but I know we could go in any direction, even indeed that you'd like to go, and I think our listeners need to understand this. You and I have a lot of things we agree on. We have a lot of things we disagree on, and we'll talk about both of those this morning. But let's talk about something that you and I have just started a discussion on, but I hope we have the opportunity to talk more about it in the months and the years to come, because it is a long-term issue, and that's redistricting. Yeah. Give me your read on that. We came to the conclusion independently of one another that this needs attention. What's your view of this, and how does it impact elections in our country?
Well, it's an issue that I've been thinking about and working on for about 6 or 7 years now, because I realize how important it is for everyone to have a voice. Our current system, at least the way we do things here in Virginia, what we end up doing is essentially allowing the elected officials to choose who their constituents are, as opposed to us choosing them, by the way that we draw the lines. During the run-up to to Virginia's redistricting, which took place, of course, after the census and takes place every 10 years, after the census, we saw that there was a move towards creating essentially permanent majorities. This is something that both parties have been guilty of doing over the years. They draw the lines in such a way that it benefits the party rather than benefits the people. And I find it just really a bad thing for happening, because what it leads to is non-competitive elections. When you have non-competitive elections, then you have fewer people participating in the process. So anything that dilutes the value of the vote, anything that basically discourages people from going out to vote, is difficult. Every time I write about it in a column in the paper, I get emails from people saying, you encourage us to go vote, but I have no one to vote for. There's one name on the ballot.
Yes.
That's not democracy.
It's really interesting, independently of your work, and you've been at this and this topic much longer than I have, but I, as a businessman, when I went to go serve in Washington, and an incredible privilege it is to serve, just seeing the dysfunction and knowing that our financial condition is unacceptable, knowing that our financial direction is unacceptable, and also, of course, stating the obvious that we're in sheer gridlock, like we're just immersed in set concrete here. I'm thinking, what's causing this? And it's not the only problem, but my own view is this, and it's controversial with some, in fact, very controversial. But my view is this, is that we have bifurcated ourselves into two political parties, the leadership of which, and that includes all who serve at the federal level, certainly, it really doesn't reflect the American people. And this actually, I draw some hope from this, Vivian, is because Congress doesn't really reflect the American people. There are fewer and fewer congressional districts, as you pointed out, that are contestable. And that's not a feeling, an emotion. You're a CPA, you're numbers and data driven. I am too. And it's irrefutable. The data is so clear that there are very few districts that are contestable. Now, could you walk us through what happens in the 50 states once the census takes place and we're divvying up these 435 seats? How does it play out?
Well, most of the states actually leave it to the legislature to draw the lines. Because the legislature is drawing their own lines, the state legislatures are drawing their own lines, as well as drawing the lines for the congressional districts.
Yes.
Of course, there are no lines for the Senate districts, so that is irrelevant to the conversation. And so Virginia does it exactly that way. You had the legislature drawing the lines for the congressional districts, and as a result, the idea is to try, as I mentioned, the main thing is that parties are trying to maintain their power. You give parties power, and that's the way they're going to do things. There have been other states where, and just a few, it's a growing number, it's not a tremendous number, and I don't have the exact number in my head right now, but there are states that have followed what's known as the Illinois model, where they actually throw the drawing of the lines to an independent commission. Now, independent means that these people have nothing to gain themselves by drawing the lines. So they're not going to be peppered with folks from the legislature or anything like that. They can do retired judges. They do all kinds of different systems use different things. But the whole idea is to take it out of the hands of the legislature, take it out of the people who it will benefit, and let an independent and they say they call them bipartisan or nonpartisan commissions to draw the lines. What they find, and of course, Illinois is a different kind of state. The way the lines are drawn, the county lines that are drawn in such a way that it's very clear separation between the two. You take a look at a map of Virginia, and of course the lines go all over the place in terms of even just the county lines and the boundaries of the 134 localities, the counties and cities that we have in Virginia. So trying to figure out and trying to carve those up, I think the best answer for all of us is to take it out of the hands of the legislature and put it over into the hands of a commission, an independent commission, that would draw the lines in such a way that would benefit the people in general. as opposed to benefiting the politicians that are already elected.
Well, the practical implications of this at the federal level, at least from my perspective, is this. We have got members in both, certainly in the House, in the House, rather. It's not in the Senate for the reasons you just mentioned because they represent the whole state. But in the House, it's human nature to want to be reelected for the most part. And so for any Republican that can be transferred out of a Democratic-leaning district into a Republican-leaning district, well, there are two people that are happy with that. The person receiving, the Republican receiving the Republican voter, and the Democratic representative, basically getting a Democratic-leaning representative. And I've looked at it this way. We have become so sophisticated in I think it's because of computers and just the information that we have available to us, is that, we used to say that maybe a state leaned a certain way, or then maybe within that a city leaned a certain way, and then we got to where we could say a neighborhood leaned a certain way. Then we could say, this street leans a certain way. And where we are now, of course, Vivian, is what? We're down to the street number. Okay, 1306 Johnson Way. You stop right there, because either your party that you like or don't like is the next two houses. And so what I've seen at the federal level, Vivian, is that you've got this intensely bifurcated group who they all love America, and this is really interesting. I mean, they're doing what they think is best for their congressional districts, but when you're an R25 or an R30, meaning you've got a natural 30-point advantage, or a D30, and there are members up there, they have a natural advantage one way or the other of 30 points, you're not rewarded for finding common ground. What happens, Vivian, when a Democratic representative looks for common ground, or a Republican in a R, say, 15 or so? What happens?
Well, the theory is, and certainly it happens in certain places, that they get a challenge. If they're a Democrat, they're going to get a challenge from the left.
That's right.
If they're a Republican, they're going to get a challenge from the right. I'll point out one other thing is that approximately 10 of the 435 House districts, based on some numbers I saw recently, are competitive districts.
Just 10.
10 of 435.
It's not right.
And so you happen to be in one of them. And
thank you for reminding me.
And the second congressional, and which is why you have you have to have relationships with people like me. If I were in one of the other districts in Virginia, if I lived in any other district besides the second, one party or other could just simply ignore me.
There's truth in that.
That really frosts me that the representative doesn't have to listen to me because he doesn't need my vote.
Well, we are in absolute agreement on this, and I want to share with you, I'm delighted to, that Representative Alan Lowenthal, Democrat from California, he reached out to our office and came over, in fact has come over twice, because I've been speaking out on this, and he led the effort in California. He actually went against his own party. As I mentioned, he is a Democrat, and I'm not saddling up for that particular plan. In fact, I just am in the process of getting information about it. But whether I'm in office or not, this has my full attention, because I think this is it's not exclusively driving the gridlock, but it is a big part of it. And I'm intent on, being part of the solution in Congress for the time that I serve. And I hope, to work with you and others going forward to advance this. It's such an important topic. Let's pivot just a little bit. I've been deliberate in my public service, Vivian, of going where the facts lead me and trying to assess things objectively. If my party's doing something well, I'm happy to brag on us and say, hey, we did some really good things, and we have energy and other areas. The Affordable Care Act. Wow. I do call it the Unaffordable Care Act. It's got serious issues. Tell me, to what degree is this problem a problem from the political standpoint for the Democratic Party generally, and then within the Commonwealth?
Well, let me talk about the Commonwealth first, because the Commonwealth is suffering problems simply because they chose to take their ball and go home, reject Medicaid expansion, and any setup of an exchange for Virginia residents. A Republican, John Watkins, has introduced bills and has introduced another bill this year already for the upcoming session that would set up a Virginia exchange. A lot of the problems that we're seeing at the federal level with access to the insurance marketplace is simply because the system is overwhelmed because certain states chose not to set up their own exchanges. As far as the political implications, I think the political implications will be non-existent for both parties when the system works. When more right now we've got this nasty thing going on with the website, the healthcare.gov website not working the way it's intended, primarily because it's being overwhelmed. And the system just simply not being there. Once the system is running, once the website is fixed, I don't see this being an issue going forward. It will be an issue simply from the standpoint that people want to talk about it. But as more and more folks, there was either New York Times or Washington, I can't remember which, Washington Post article about how well the system is working in Kentucky.
Well, I tell you, Vivian, I know the listeners can't see this obviously because it's a unidimensional medium here of just voice, but I am shaking my head no. On this one, we have a firm, respectful disagreement. Now, look, it has nothing to do with the website. That is a managerial issue. It will be fixed. I have not focused in on that. As embarrassing as that's been to the administration as a managerial issue. The substance of the bill, Vivian, the people truly of all persuasion, political party, it's really hitting so many in an adverse way. Millions of Americans who believed, based on the statements of the president, that they would be able to keep their insurance. This is to me, an issue that is going to be here, and because people aren't going to forget what they're going through right now. I certainly want to give you the opportunity to perhaps comment on that and other things right after we get back from a break. I am Scott Rigell. It is 9:53 a.m. and you're listening to the John Fredericks Show.
Call Rose Brothers Heating and Air. We're old enough to trust and small enough to care. Rose Brothers Heating and Air at 898-3051. And we'll be right there.
If your air won't blow, let us know. Call Rose Brothers at 898-3051. And we'll be right there and we'll get the job done. The number again, 898-3051. That's 898-3051.
Rose Brothers Heating and Air at 898-3051. And we'll be right there.
Are you ready to finish out 2013 on a strong note? Your computer systems have the energy to finish the rest of the year out with a bang. At Providence Computers, we want to help you energize your home and business computer systems and send your students off to school with confidence. We provide excellent choices and options for upgrades to make your computers perform powerfully. Faster hard drives, more RAM, a backup drive, new virus software, or a refurbished laptop. Visit our store at 1421 Council Road in Chesapeake at Volvo. Finish 2013 strong by calling 382-7768 or visit us on the web, providencecomputers.com.
Good morning. It's 9:54 a.m. I'm Scott Rigell. I'm the guest host this morning for the John Fredericks Show, and I've allowed my friend and our guest at least a minute to think through a thoughtful rebuttal on that. I think that the Unaffordable Care Act is going to be an issue well into 2014, and I don't think that's your position, Vivian, but if you could just maybe comment on that, and then we'll pivot to some other topics here in the few minutes that we have left.
The main thing is that are people getting health care? And as I say, take a look at what's going on in Kentucky right now. Kentucky set up their own exchange. They are a very, very poor state, and the article that I saw in the paper the other day talked about, and I believe it was a New York Times article, went down to Kentucky and interviewed folks who are actually getting health care for the first time in their lives. There's no doubt that, and one of the guys said, wow, this might make me a Democrat. I mean, literally said that, it was quoted as saying that in the paper, simply because of the fact that these folks are having health care for the first time. Are there going to be people who are going to lose their policies? Yes. There's no question that is always, that the president was wrong to have promised that. and that has always been, if you read through the information, and most people are going, really, we kind of all knew this, that if you have a change in policies, where policies have to carry certain minimums and those kinds of things, then some of those policies are not going to qualify. So therefore, you're not going to be able to keep those policies simply because that's the case. I do believe that given the fact that we're talking about 3% is the number that I saw of the policies that are not going to meet the criteria and therefore would not be renewed, I think that being the case, that if this is an issue, it's going to be because we have folks out there advocating for the 3% instead of the 97%.
Interesting. And, this will all unfold next year, and maybe we can come back on the show if John will have us. It'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. It's certainly true, Vivian, and I'm happy to. I don't even see it as a concession. To me, it's just a statement of fact that there are some people who didn't have insurance before that will have access to it. It's just that the preponderance of it, the overall effect, I truly see as adverse, and I've made that clear. I really enjoy your articles in the Virginian Pilot. You're published regularly there. They give you a lot of ink, and they should. Tell us about, if you would, Ken Cuccinelli actually won Virginia Beach, and I don't know if that surprised you or not, but what implications might that have? Okay. All right.
No, Virginia Beach has been, first of all, you have to understand that although that certainly this electorate in 2013 looked a lot more like the electorate looked in 2012, that's not the norm in Virginia. Usually our off-year elections end up looking totally different from the way they look in presidential years. So the electorate for 14, as you're looking towards Virginia Beach for 14, I would say Virginia Beach is going to be a city that leans Republican. It is never going. Ken Cuccinelli barely won Virginia Beach, so when you look at it in that context, it wasn't surprising to me. After all, you won Virginia Beach, as I recall,
yes,
at the same time that Barack Obama won Virginia Beach,
and Tim Kaine.
People actually do split their votes. That's one thing Virginians are proud of, is their ability to split their votes and vote for whomever they think is best, all the way up and down the ticket. So there's no party line voting to speak in Virginia.
What about the and look, this is completely self-serving. I admit that right up front. But the just the turnout in the fall, in November of next year, across the Commonwealth in terms of just turnout. What different groups might come out and how that might benefit one party or the other. Certainly, Senator Warner's up for re-election, and there's a lot of active discussion about that particular race, and certainly the congressional districts as well.
Well, the fact that you have the Senate race at the top of the ticket is really important, because that's going to be what's going to be the driver of the turnout. If there were a race where we didn't have a Senate race at the top, and the congressional races were only the races on the ballot, which of course is never going to happen, basically, or it happens once every 6 years or something, then what happens is that you would have lower turnout, because each congressional representative would be working their own district.
Yes.
So and given that I've already said that only about 10 districts out of 435 in the country are competitive, and yours is one of them, that means the other districts in Virginia are not.
It is game on in Virginia, too, and across the Commonwealth. Vivian, thank you so much for being on the show this morning. I'm Scott Rigell. I've been guest hosting the John Fredericks Show this morning. It's been a real pleasure to be with you today. We've covered some very difficult topics. I want to close as we began, which is drawing from the deep well of the wisdom of our founding documents. And Jefferson said it this way, Thomas Jefferson: it is part of the American character to consider nothing as desperate. So in all these challenges, we can't do this.
CBS News,
AM
I'm Gary
6050
Nunn.
Debate
Builders are busier.